Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I hereby announce that this meeting is being held in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Open Public Meeting Act. Proper notice of meeting dates has been given to the Morris News-Bee and the Morris County Daily Record and posted on the bulletin board in Borough Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision. And decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Good evening and Happy New Year. This is the Planning Board meeting of January 20th, 2025, and it's our reorganization meeting. I'm sure you'll notice there are some new faces here. Councilman Bill Houston and Andrew Wolf, welcome. And there are some faces that are sadly missing. One would be former Councilwoman Kathy Kelly, and the other our former Mayor Frank Drexler. The new governing body chose not to reappoint Frank to the Planning Board. Frank was first appointed to the Planning Board for a 3-year term before he ran for council. He served on the council for 6 years, and when he was elected mayor in 1987, he served on the Planning Board for 32 years as mayor, and an additional 6 years since he retired from being mayor. That's 41 years as a member of the Planning Board, quite a record. He will be sorely missed. You see, Frank knows where all the easements are and why they're there. He knows every street, and he knows where most of you live. Where there is dedicated open space or Green Acres property, and how and when it was acquired. He knows every stream. He knows every storm drain and where it empties. Every parking space, most of which he created when he was mayor. He knows all the shade trees, and he knows every utility pole and who owns it. How all the sewers flow and where the wetlands are. He knows the history and the origins of most all the properties and developments, all the businesses. In fact, he made this borough the reason all of you live here. He has that institutional knowledge that even our professionals rely on. But he has more than that. He has something that's in very short supply these days. He has wisdom. And for almost 50 years, he shared that wisdom with us to make Morris Plains the community that it is. Frank, you will be deeply missed, and this board will not be the same without your knowledge, and especially without your wisdom. Thank you for your dedication. Roll call, please.
Mr. Woronowicz?
Present.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Present.
Mrs. Stecker?
Present.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Present.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Mr. Bezold?
Here.
Mayor Karr?
Present.
Mr. Wall?
Here.
And Mr. Houston?
Present.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and good evening, everybody. This is the Morris Plains Planning Board Reorganization meeting of January 20th, 2025. The first order of business is the reorganization of the Morris Plains Planning Board for 2025. Mr. H. Steve Augenblick was reappointed as Class 4 member, and Mr. Andrew Wolf was appointed as a Class 4 member, with Mr. Bill Houston was appointed as Class 3 member, and representing the governing body, and myself was reappointed as Class 1 member. At this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Wolf, congratulations, and Councilman Houston to the Planning Board. Good luck and best of luck to you, both of you. Thank you. The next order of business is the nomination of a board chair to serve in 2025. May I have nominations for a chairperson?
I nominate Sue McCluskey.
I would like to nominate Michael Garavaglia.
Are there any additional nominations? Being no further nominations, I declare the nominations closed and ask for a roll call on the nomination of Sue as chair.
Mr. Augenblick? Mr. Augenblick? For Sue McCluskey for chair.
No.
Mr. Garavaglia?
No.
Mrs. Stecker?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. McCluskey, you abstain?
No, I didn't abstain. I'll vote yes.
Oh, good. Okay, Mr. Kelly?
No.
Mr. Bezold?
No.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
No.
Mr. Houston?
No.
Okay. Now, can I have a motion for Mr. Garavaglia as chairman? Mr. Augenblick?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker?
No.
Mrs. McCluskey?
No.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
No.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay, so on that, I have a first. Can I have Mr. Bezold was the first for Mr. Garavaglia. Can I have a second on that vote, please?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Nominations for board vice chair. I have nominations for vice chair.
nominate Mr. Bezold.
Is
Are
there,
there any other nominations? Seeing none, I close the nominations.
can I have a
Ask
second?
for a roll call on
I
Mr.
need
Bezold.
a second. Can someone second Mr. Bezel's nomination?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Augenblick,
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia,
Yes.
Mrs. Steckert,
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey,
Abstain.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bezel,
You can vote yes, I'll vote yes.
Mayor Karr,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
and Bill Houston, Mr. Houston.
Yes. At this time, I would like to congratulate Mike Garavaglia and Mr. John Bezel on their election to the And at this time, I would like to especially thank all the board members for their time and service, and I'm looking forward to working with the planning board members on all matters that come before us. I also like to thank member Frank Drexler and Captain Kelly for their prior roles on the planning board, and everybody up here for their time and their dedication, spent away from their families, long evenings, looking over plans for hours. It takes a lot of dedication, and I thank each and every one of you for the time. And I'd like to thank Ms. McCluskey for her time as chairwoman of the board. And thank you, everybody, and look forward to working with you. I turn the meeting over to Mike Garavaglia.
So, first of all, I want to thank the board for their vote of confidence in electing me as chair for 2025 for the planning board. I vow to make the most of the opportunity and work for the Borough of Morris Plains to do the best job I possibly can. So again, thank you very much. I do have that sheet. So, if I go to the agenda, the next order of business is to adopt a resolution to approve the meeting dates for 2025. And I will read that resolution. Planning Board Resolution number 25-01, Notice of Meetings. Be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains in the County of Morris and State of New Jersey on this 20th day of January 2025 as follows. Whereas Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of the State of New Jersey for 1975, known as and hereinafter designated as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires notification of meetings of public bodies as therein defined in the manner therein set forth. Now, therefore, for purposes of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, aforesaid, the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains hereby makes the following designations, and there are 5 designations. Number 1, the Morris Daily Record and the Morris Newsbee, or as an alternate to the Morris Newsbee, the Star Ledger, are hereby designated as the two newspapers to receive notice of meetings as required by and any and all sections of the Open Public Meetings Act. It appearing that said newspapers are most likely to inform the local public of such meetings. 2, the location of the posting of the notice of meetings shall be the bulletin board of the Borough Hall. 3, the sum of $5 is hereby fixed as the amount to be paid by any persons requesting individual notice of meetings as provided in Section 14 of the Open Public Meetings Act. 4, the regular meetings of the Planning Board for the year 2025 shall be February 10th, March 17th, April 21st, May 12th, June 16th, July 21st, August 18th, September 15th, October 20th, November 17th, December 8th, and January 19th of 2026 at 7:30 p.m. 5, all meetings of the Planning Board shall be open to the public. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution for the meeting dates for 2025?
May I ask a question on number 3?
Sure.
Per applicant, per application, or per the year? What's the $5? What's the window of request?
It's $5 to request this. Yeah,
For each meeting?
No, every meeting is on
But, okay.
One time thing.
Oh, gotcha.
You good, Steve?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve the resolution for the meeting dates for 2025?
I approve.
Move it.
Can I have a second?
Whose name was taken on the first one?
Okay, Mr. Ogleblit, you moved, and now I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Karen, roll call.
Mr. Ogleblit,
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia,
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker, Mrs. McCluskey,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bezold,
Yes.
Mayor Karr,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
and Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Okay. The next order of business is to adopt the resolution of professional services for the year 2025. I will also read that resolution. Planning Board Resolution Number 25-02, Legal Notice, Borough of Morris Plains, Morris County, New Jersey, Planning Board Professional Services. Whereas the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains desires to retain the services of planning consultants, an engineer, and an attorney to perform professional services as required for the year 2025. And whereas the foregoing services are professional services as in NJSA 40A:11-2 parentheses 6, which are permitted to be contracted without public bidding as set forth in NJSA 40A:11-5 parentheses A parentheses, or I'm sorry, 5 parentheses 1 parentheses A, and as a non-fair and open contract pursuant to the provision of NJSA 19:A-20.5. And whereas the board has determined that the value of each of the professional services will exceed $17,500, and whereas each of the professional consultants named below have completed and submitted a business entity disclosure certification which certifies that each firm has not made any reportable contributions to a political or candidate committee represented by a board member in the previous 1 year, and that the contract will prohibit the below-listed firms from making any reportable contribution through the term of the contract. And whereas the board has determined after due consideration that the following named individuals shall be appointed to fill the positions hereafter designated. Now, therefore, Be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains as follows. 1. The board retains the services of the following to be compensated pursuant to the sums appropriated for the purpose in the duly adopted municipal budget for the year 2025. A. Planning consultants Paul A. Phillips and Liz Laney of Phillips, Price, Rigel, Laney, Hughes LLC. B. Engineer William Ryden of Anderson and Denzel Associates, Inc. C. Board Attorney Andrew M. Brewer, ESQ of Mariziti Falcon LLP. 2. The business disclosure entity certification and the determination of value be placed on file with this resolution. And 3. The board secretary shall cause a copy of this resolution to be published in accordance with NJSA 40A:11-5, parentheses 1, parentheses A, parentheses I. 4. This resolution shall take effect as provided by law. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution adopting the professional services for 2025?
Mr. Garavaglia,
Yes.
I do have a question. Again, a newbie question. The value of each professional services will exceed $17,500. Where does that value come from? Is anybody aware?
That's a threshold, 17,500 is a threshold for awarding certain contracts with or without public bidding, if notice. You know, if you were going to buy bricks, it's like it's this type of thing that goes out to bid because anybody can provide bricks that are generally uniform. I don't go too deep into this. Professional services, sometimes professional services, you go out without bidding, so they don't go out to public, they go, you know, if they're known to have experience and it's comfortable, but you can only, the entity, you have a qualified purchasing agent, which I believe what it does, but that's a threshold, and it's, if it is estimated that the, you know, because of the history of billing, it's going to be more than that, that's you put it down, that it's going to be in excess of that.
Okay, so,
It's not that we gave a detailed estimate of what's contained, typically it's on the history of it.
okay, so because it's estimated to exceed $17,500, that means that it does not have to go to bid?
It means that a qualified purchasing agent is going to be reviewing it and eventually, and you can approve, the ultimate approval is done by a qualified purchasing agent.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So again, can I have a motion to approve the resolution adopting the professional services for 2025?
So,
Okay, was
Can I
that
have a
Mr.
second?
Wolf? Oh.
Second?
Second?
I second.
Okay,
Roll call, Karen?
all right. Mr. Orgenflip?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker? Yes. Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay. The next two resolutions are for the committee appointments. And Mr. Brewer, I have a question for you. Is it okay to table this until our next meeting so that I can decide and review the members, since I was just elected chair?
yes, I don't believe that's an issue, there's nothing precedent would have to, and there's nothing that would require those appointments to be made at this meeting.
Okay. So for Planning Board Resolution number 25-03, which is the Minor Site Plan Committee, can I have a motion that the resolution adopting the Minor Site Plan Committee for the year 2025 be moved to the February 10th, 2025 meeting?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, Karen?
Okay. Mr. Orgenflip?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker? Yes. Excuse me?
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay, Planning Board Resolution number 25-04, which is the Master Plan Review Committee. Again, can I have a motion that the resolution adopting the Master Plan Review Committee for the year 2025 be moved to the February 10th, 2025 meeting?
And I'll second.
Okay, so,
Roll call, Karen?
okay. Mr. Ogenblick?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is correspondences and bills. Karen, do we have any this evening?
We have bills, I believe, Mr. Kelly has them, or Mrs. McCluskey has them.
I have purchase order number 202-42412 for Michelle Quick for transcript proceedings for $112. And purchase order number 202-42413 for Phillips, Price and Greigel for planning general for $3,098.75. Purchase order number 202-50021 for Michelle Quick for transcripts, $49. And purchase order number 202-50109 for Michelle Quick for transcripts for $49. If there's no questions, I make a motion to approve the invoices.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, Karen?
Mr. Ogenblick?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda are comments from the public, and this is limited to items not on the agenda. So, state your first and last name, spell your last name, and state your address.
Nancy Mirabelle, Mirabelle, 349 Lane in Morris Plains. My first question is, since we have some new people up here, could we possibly give consideration to members of the board refraining from using or having their cell phones out during the meeting?
I personally don't have a problem with that. I know I turn mine off, mine is sitting here, but.
So I don't have a problem with that either. We do say that at our council meetings, that members of the board should not use their cell phones during meetings, and if it is, not for town business.
Thank you. The three people who voted yes to grant the variances for the McDonald's application, could you please explain the benefits or how those variances benefit the community?
You want my advice? I would be bad precedent to require give and take this comment, but you can, members don't have to speak. This is comment. Typically what it is, but to force coming back and forth, there's a resolution that comes forward. That's what it is. So I understand the desire, but you're gonna have precedent where they're gonna require, give and take. Certainly, my advice, and the chair nor the board has to take it, but my advice is this, is that this is a public comment period where the public can say whatever it chooses. It is not a mandatory give and take where the board members have to ask specific questions. And it's going to be precedent setting if the chair, and the chair can't require people to speak. They can, if they choose, you can hand it off to them, obviously. And the actual reasons are set forth in a resolution. There are, again, I'll go far afield. There are a significant number of court cases that say that the comments of an individual member on reasons for things are irrelevant is what gets adopted in the resolution. But that being said, it is a judgment call, but
So I would tend to agree with that, but the piece that I agree with most is that it's irrelevant, I think, at this point. So I would side with my legal advice and say no.
Now, I'm not sure if this is a question for the planning board or for the town council, but would there be any plans to do an air quality study in the area of the McDonald's site before the operation starts? Just so that if a question does come up in the future, we have something to compare it with?
What do you
I
forecasting?
can-
Sorry, I'm trying to get some depth in this question. What are you,
I
what
don't know if
specifically are you
this
looking
is-
for?
I don't know if this is a question for the planning board or for the town council, but are there
Yeah.
plans in the future to do an air quality study before everything starts happening?
Understood, but why? Baseline.
Because if we need to compare something, we have it before the operation starts.
I'll answer briefly. One of the requirements, one of the conditions of approval is that the applicant's gonna have to demonstrate that they comply with all the performance standards. I don't think that there is an air quality one. There's noise, there's odors, there's some other things that will have to be undertaken. But I know it's a general, you have to go to the ordinance, look at the performance standards. Those things will have to be demonstrated at some point. I don't think the planning board has no power to go do things, you can't require it at all, and I have no indication that the governing body is going to be doing that, but nobody up here speaks for the governing body.
Okay, thank you.
So state your first and last name, spell your last, and state your address.
Yep, Cherylann Davies, D-A-V-I-E-S, at 23 Kathleen Place. I was about to say Morris Plains, just so used to saying that. So, I don't know if this is for the planning board or the council. It's been many years since I've been in front of either the council or the planning board, I can't remember. But in this week's, about this topic, in this week's weekly email was the notification of another version of the draft flood map. Sorry, Jason, you can.
That's okay, I have to remember on.
I know you do. So I just, again, I don't know if this is the right place to ask. It's like I said, it's been about 10 or 11 years. I have a copy of the draft floodplain map from 2015 in my house. That's how long ago I was working on this with some neighbors as well. So I just want to understand what is the next process. What has Morris Plains been doing about it in the last 10 years? I'm happy to take this offline. I don't know who to take it offline with any longer.
I'll just answer that for you. I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Bill Ryan, our engineer, who's at I'll say a seminar, that may not be the right word for it, but was for an explanation of the new flood maps. So he's going to go over with that with us tomorrow. I intend to put some sort of notification out to the residents that are affected, but I have to get a better understanding of who's affected, who else is affected, who may be taken out of out of those zones. So there'll be more to come on that. But
Got it.
tomorrow's the schedule.
Can members of the public or myself be involved in these meetings just to understand? Or
So I will have, once I get a better understanding of what's going on, I will have either myself or Bill contact you. That's my intention.
Okay.
Along with your neighbor. I know
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
I got an email from her as well, so we'll be in touch.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
State your first, last name, spell your last, and state your address.
Tom Battagliese, Battagliese, 2 Cutler Road. I just wanted to follow up on the air pollution question, just to get some better clarity around that. So will the testing for the different performance standards, which does include odors at a minimum, noise and some other things, will that be done before the lights go on, so to speak, as well as after the lights go on to show that they're meeting the conditions during normal operations?
I can give a general one. I don't know about the specifics. The general one is that what this board can enforce is that, and one of the conditions is that they have to demonstrate that they will meet the performance standards. After that, it's not up to the board, 2 years, 5 years, 50 years down the road, if something else changes, I'm not sure. Typically, it is what is required, what is, I know is a bit of an issue on performance standards, whether they have to demonstrate it as part of the application or it can be a condition of approval. That's how the board members that voted chose to do it. So prior to them getting a CO or turn on the lights, as you say, they would have to demonstrate that the operations would comply with the performance standards. I don't know if there'll be continuing testing by the borough after that.
Okay, so far, as an example, they said they will comply with the noise standards based on a report that was submitted with insufficient data that was not submitted by a noise expert. So I think you guys need to get some more clarity on what would be expected, because I think just saying they will meet it is, I think, quite insufficient in my mind to prove that they are actually meeting it. And this is what the whole reason why I was trying to raise these points beforehand, because before you approve an application, you should have the wherewithal to understand, are they actually going to be able to meet it? So I don't know who's accountable for that, but I have this seems very gray and open-ended at the moment.
Bill, I'm not sure, this is I don't think I have anything to add other than what I said, addressing, demonstrating performance standards before. I'm not sure if you have anything to add.
No, I don't have anything else to add, just to reinforce that we will conduct those tests, we will oversee them, and if the standards are met, then the certificate of occupancy will be issued. And ongoing compliance would be a zoning enforcement.
Okay, and there will be written reports then that will be available through the annex like there was with the application, or how will the public have access to that information?
There will be written reports. I'm not sure what the protocol is for disseminating. There will be part of the record.
Okay. All right. I don't really know how to get better clarity on this, but it seems rather open-ended. Maybe, I don't know, to the chair if there's some way to get better granularity on what this all means, but it seems really open-ended at the moment.
Karen, can you do me a favor? At this point, can you just make a note of this, and then I'll come back to you, and I'll try to get more information.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks very much.
State your first name, your last name, spell your last name, and state your address.
Lisa Schroeder, 97 Maple Avenue. So first of all, I wanted to commend the board for voting in Mr. Garavaglia as the new chair. Thank you all for demonstrating to the town that we deserve someone in that seat that will treat residents with the respect that they all deserve. To the newest members, thank you, and thank you for your service. I know that it will not always be easy to be up there, and I understand that your votes are dictated by legal standards and not just public opinion. I know that each of you are going to find yourselves in borderline positions where we have empathy. Give the public the explanation and the attention that these matters deserve. Naps and nasty comments to concerned members of the public have no place here. Mr. Brewer, going forward, we need you to be the lawyer that this town needs. Surely you know that an attorney who has been paid by their client with crowd-funded funds does not represent all donors to the crowd fund. Morris Plains uses crowdfunding called taxes to pay you. Does that mean that you and I have an attorney-client relationship? Of course not. Of everything that went down last year during the hearings for McDonald's, the decision to allow that absurd assertion to stand was the most egregious. The exclusion of the Bayonne evidence was a close second. I know you had a very aggressive chairperson breathing down your neck, but you have an obligation to the town and to the residents to deliver accurate legal advice. And I know it's hard sitting up there, and I don't envy the position that you are in, but you have chosen to be up there, so please be the lawyer that we need. Haney, we need you to be more engaged, thoughtful, and strategic. It was asserted during the McDonald's hearings last year that once a town approves a use, it has essentially also concluded that the town can handle the additional traffic volumes that come with that use. If this is indeed true, then why in the world did you not advise the board about every single new use that was added in Ordinance 14-2023? I have read your report to the planning board dated September 14th, 2023, and it was nothing more than a rubber stamp. Where was the analysis? Where was the expert guidance that you owe this town? Why did you not perform a use-by-use analysis of whether this town could actually withstand every single new use for each zone? Why did you not call it to the board's attention how easy it is for two neighboring lots to be merged and suggest that this should perhaps be accounted for in the rezoning ordinance? You're paid to advise the board on all potential issues and outcomes that might not otherwise be on the board's radar. You are the expert. I have no doubt that certain members of the board were applying pressure to you for a certain result, but we were all so disappointed by the lack of diligence here because the path that deeply flawed ordinance was the original sin, and this entire McDonald's circus could have been prevented with more thoughtful and strategic guidance. Ms. Steckert, many of us watched the footage from October 19th, 2023, the council meeting, where you chastised the council members who voted no for the rezoning ordinance. It's truly ironic that the profoundly special character of this town that you so passionately spoke about will be destroyed by your vote. You commented that their no vote in the ordinance indicated a lack of trust in the process, but your bare yes vote without any explanation or commentary is but one example of when no one trusts the process. The ordinance was barely analyzed, and there were open questions, and yet you think it's okay to vote yes on something that's not even half-baked. If that's how you think diligent, well-informed decision-making looks, then I don't think a council run should be in your future. Finally, a huge thank you to Mr. Kelly, Mr. Augenblick, Mr. Bezold, and Mr. Garavaglia for having the common sense to vote based on the record and not based on political forces behind the scenes. I hope the new board members take note of this excellent example of competent and outstanding public.
Clolery, C-L-O-L-E-R-Y, 18 Hillview Avenue, Morris Plains. I was wondering if the board had seen this letter that's been put in the mailboxes of everybody in and around the McDonald's site. It's 7 or 8 streets. Everybody and realtors are saying, sell now, because of the damage that's going to be done by this construction, by this change in the zoning and the building of that process. There's going to be Zoom calls, there's going to be discussions, realtors who have 20 to 25 years of experience telling us that this is going to be damaging to our homes. This is irreparable damage to the investments of the people of this community. Had my wife and I known that this was coming down the pipe, we would not have invested $110,000 extra for a new roof, new hardy board siding, and other fixes. There is no way we would have spent 6 figures had we known this was coming down the pike. And now we've got experts putting things in mailboxes saying irreparable harm to our investments. A home is the largest investment most people will ever make in their lives. And the council passing the zoning law and this board approving the license to McDonald's is damaging to the investments of the people of this community.
I just love the microphone, so I'll get up here. Carolyn Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T-T, 19 Deaton Road. I guess my first question is just about process, because this is new to me, being only 29 and dealing with all of this. Can somebody on the board explain to me what exactly the approval of resolution means and what's going to happen in a few minutes?
Are you talking about the McDonald's resolution?
Yeah, but I mean in general, I'm assuming the process is the same for any application to this stage.
The vote to approve was done last month. The courts have recognized that just the votes saying yes or no needs to be put, the reasons behind it, the justification, the analysis has to be put into writing in a form that people that agree, that disagree could challenge it, and then a court, if need be, would have something to review. So the standard way to do vote on an application is to vote at one meeting and read and have a resolution that embodies things. So there's a draft, people look at it, make sure things are correct. That's what's going to go forward on McDonald's. It is the logic of having voted for a resolution. The only people that would be, voting in favor of the application, the only people that would be qualified to vote for explaining why it was an approval would be the people that voted. So the people that voted in favor are qualified to vote on this resolution. What that does is sets the reasons for it, but also that will be published in the newspaper in 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then the law provides publication by which he has to challenge it. That's really it's a formality that sets the reasons for a vote. So another body, a court, if need be, could say, actually does a few things. One, it sets the reasons for it. 2, it sets forth all the conditions, so there's something in writing what the applicant will have to do as part of their approval. Does that answer it? I hope.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So who on the board tonight is officially voting on that?
There are 3 people, I believe, that are still on the board that voted for it. Ms. Steckert, the mayor, and Ms. McCluskey, I believe, are the 3 members that are still on the board. That's all you can, only members that voted in favor are qualified to vote. This would be kind of illogical to have a person that said no and then setting the reasons for a yes. That's why. That's courts, you can't, only people voted in favor. So there are 3.
Legally, could they change their mind, or is it essentially they will say yes because they voted yes?
No, the courts have said the operative thing that happened is the yes vote. That sets things, the rights are happening. Then there's things that then there's times, and one of the things we talked about before, are timing things. So to pass a resolution. If not, the applicant can go to court and force the resolution to be adopted, and municipality has to pay the cost. So there's no changing the minds, there's just setting the reasons for and the conditions.
Tonight, will we hear the reasons of those 3 people voting yes or no?
I'm going to read a very, if the standard is as usual, I'm going to read a very long resolution, which is why I have water. Yes, it is the practice of this board to read, for the attorney to read the resolution out loud.
And that will include the reasoning of people who voted yes who are no longer in this room?
It's not the reasoning of people, it's the reasoning of the board. I know that's a fine line, but it's what the board has decided are the reasons. Sorry, jump in.
And then I guess so moving forward, if things come up, and excuse my verbiage here, because again, this is like a new territory for me. So let's say there becomes an issue with this application moving forward or whatnot, and it has to come back to the planning board. Does it Like, is it this board now that's invested in the future of the application, or is it only the 3 people who had voted yes last year? Like, if the vote went out today, I think it would be a different outcome. So is it just a timing thing?
I'm not sure what you mean by come back to the board.
My understanding is that, let's say there is an issue 6 months from, well, I don't actually know the timing of these things. So down the line, we have to do a test at the McDonald's property and it fails. And I know that's super generic, but I hope that kind of makes sense. And then they need to do something again with that, like they have to come back and talk to the planning board for whatever reason. Does that ever happen? Does the McDonald's council ever have to come back and speak with this board?
Typically, you demonstrate the examples you gave, performance standards on whether they're going to comply with the condition. That is one of the board professionals or the borough professionals to make sure they look at the noise decibel level. They have a noise little meter at the property line that measure it. On their soundboards, does it matter, or does it reach?
And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have a more practical example that I think will help me. So the application laid out, which I know we're all aware of, that the crosswalk is going to be moved. But I know that that is contingent on things with the DOT. So let's say, whatever the timing is, the DOT is like, nope, you guys actually never talked to us, or no, we found this, whatever, and the crosswalk does not get moved. So that would change the application as I understand it. So can we use that example? Like if the DOT changes their mind on this crosswalk moving?
If anything, I'm going to say if.
Sorry, I'm hearing talking, so it's hard for me to focus.
If anything has to come before this board, and that's the best way to do it, catch all. And I don't know, there's some reasons why things may have to come back to the board. They want to amend it. If something had to come back to the board, it's the whole board that hears it. It's not just the 3, because they're coming now for new relief from the board.
Okay.
It's not why the old decision was made, it's new relief. But that's an if, and I don't know, there's lots of hypotheticals, so I don't want to say what would have to come back, but if a change had to be made, and if they needed relief from the board, everybody votes.
I see.
Everybody that's qualified to vote can vote.
Okay. I guess in the spirit of new board members, and I am agreeing with the no phone rule, I don't know if it has to be written down, but I think it's crazy that somebody was able to sleep during a lot of the testimony and then vote. Can that be a rule too, that if you're not at X amount of hours alert and conscious, maybe you have to, like paying attention, that you can't cast a vote on something like that?
I had heard rumors of what you're talking about, but no, hang on. So I've heard rumors. I didn't see it firsthand. I was sitting down there. I'm not on Facebook. So I would say, as a board member, if, for instance, my buddy Andrew fell asleep, I would make sure he was up.
Okay.
So I would do my best to make sure that doesn't happen. But I don't know what else to tell you as far as that goes.
Okay.
Is there anything legally that? No. So
Is that true that nothing can be done? Is that true that nothing can be done legally if a board member is sleeping at given times during testimony?
It's the first time I've ever heard of it, but I'll give you an example. Why you're treading into water that's very difficult. Occasionally, the issue comes up on whether an individual board member has a conflict. So if the Provident Bank was moving in and there was a officer of Provident Bank on this board, neither I nor the board has the ability to prohibit them from voting. Only a member can do it. They can go against the advice of good judgment. But this has been we all have heard the League of Municipalities down Atlantic City every year. This has been a topic of discussion that boards don't have a power to sanction or prohibit one of their own from voting because of a conflict. If that's the case, you're not going to have the power, and I don't want to give credence to it, but anyway, for what is perceived to be not paying attention to meetings. People can not be at meetings, read the transcript, and still vote. So if there's an accusation of non-attention, that is in no way something that a board could prohibit one of its members from voting because of that allegation. You're treading into really bad water there.
The board, though, asked them to listen to the transcripts or read the transcripts as if they were not here.
The board can't require it. It can only require if a person is physically absent from a meeting. That's the municipal land use law requires. And actually, the board doesn't require it. That is then if the person is, during roll call, is marked absent and does not attend a meeting at which testimony is given, that's the one situation their name would not get called for the vote at the time unless they had signed a certification that they had read it. But there's no extra grounds for a board to be requiring people to read transcripts.
I have another question. I had two cases before two different towns, and the town wasn't able to approve the application without the DOT approval. Are we allowed to approve this site without them actually having it approved from the DOT?
It is subject to DOT approval. I think one of the things we talked about is oftentimes an application will require approval from the planning board, as well as the health department, as well as DOT, as well as other entities. There are lots of regulatory entities. That approval process has to start someplace. So an entity, it's often the case, you approve an application subject to getting your other approvals. So a health clinic has to get approval from the New Jersey Health Department and Health and Human Services or whoever, but it starts someplace, and then you don't get that approval. They don't get the final CO unless and until the DOT or the other approving agencies also approve. It has to start someplace, because then you'd say they have to go to the NJDOT. Well, the NJDOT says you also have to have your site plan approvals. Somebody has to go first. It's not a strange event where an application needs approval of several different entities. So it often happens. Most of my resolutions in most towns have a provision that it also requires approval by all the other agencies with jurisdiction over that action. That's not uncommon.
Seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, it's a lot easier and minor to get DOT approval than it is the town approval. So if for some reason the DOT was to turn this down and now we've already approved them, they can't go ahead with it.
That's correct. They need DOT. That's a condition, is that they need the highway access. That is one of the conditions that's in this resolution.
Wouldn't it have made sense to make it? I mean, the other towns made it sound like it. Well, I didn't have the choice. I had to have DOT approved before they would even hear it, or before they would vote on it. I think my experience, that's the reverse of what it usually is. But it has to start, like I said, it has to start someplace. One entity has to give it when 2, 3, or 4 entities have jurisdiction over a matter.
Can I, since we're on DOT, do you mind if I ask more questions?
No, because I actually have a DOT question, so by all means.
Okay, cool. So I was at the council meeting on the 7th, and I'm going to get his name wrong, so if you guys know his name, you can correct me. I'm going to say it was Kamil Woronowicz. Maybe I'm pronouncing his name wrong and you guys don't even know who he is. He spoke at the council meeting, and he said that he called the DOT, and there was no record of anybody from McDonald's or the group contacting DOT. Now, I know I could call the DOT and probably get no information as well. I just think we need some clarification on that, because it was even put in your resolution. I have it written down where it's at, that there was some kind of meeting with the DOT and the engineer. Applicant had a pre-meeting with the New Jersey DOT. So I would really like clarification and I don't know how we can get that clarification, that the DOT has been informed.
Sure, as a general matter, you really, I'll answer the second question, and you'll be satisfied, I think. As a general matter, if you believe that there was testimony that was dishonest or whatever, that would be a reason for going back in. I've seen an email from the NJDOT with about 8 other NJDOT people on it, and people to McDonald's setting up a Zoom call to discuss the pre-application. That means it's there.
Perfect.
I will represent that exists. So this issue is it's out there, but it's not.
Okay, and I appreciate that, because again, I know I could call tomorrow and they're gonna tell me they have no record.
Whoever you talk to may have had the record.
Exactly.
The record exists.
Thank you.
John, just for your clarification, that happened at the reorg meeting.
Just for your clarification, that happened at the reorg meeting. The next day, I got that information from the person that spoke that night. I got his information and his open request that he sent to the DOT. The next day, I had the paperwork that the meeting was, and he has that paperwork and all the emails, the email thread and all that. I think the minutes for the meeting and everything.
Thank you.
That was kind of my next question. So in applications like this, because I'm sure we're going to see others, unfortunately, is there a central DOT contact that like does Mars Plains Planning Board have a DOT contact, or is every situation different and like the applicants go to their own DOT contact and it could change each application?
I don't know of any standard DOT contact, because people come and go from the place and whoever gets it, so there's not a standard name. There's not like one name that people more claims would go to. It could be other people.
Okay, that's helpful. If I have concerns about stuff in the application, is now the forum to share them or at a different time and place?
Say that again.
If I have concerns that I don't feel were accurately addressed in all of the hours we spent together last year, is now the time to air those, or is it a different time or place?
The application is closed. That's, you know, I don't, that's such a general question, I don't know. I mean.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to continue asking my questions then, and then you can tell me to be quiet, I guess. So, I already said my name, but I hope that a name that you guys know, just like any of the other residents on Dayton, because I would assume that once a decision was made, prior to that, you guys actually went out and met the families that this was gonna be accurately or directly affecting. But regardless, I was also hoping that you guys know how many expecting moms, young kids, which ones are riding tricycles versus which ones are learning to ride their two-wheelers, how many dogs are being walked every night, how many kids are riding their electric scooters. All of these things would have been important to understand in order to sit there and accurately say the benefits outweigh the detriments. I don't see how that decision could be made without actually getting to know the residents on that street. So I'm a little bit confused about that. And while I have concerns about pretty much everything on the entire application, I think that the egress onto the residential street, Dayton, is so unnecessary, and I don't think anything good is going to come of it. So unfortunately, I'm trying to like proactively plan for the worst case scenario. I know that we were talking about how the public didn't have models. I don't want to bring in a model of a kid that can't walk anymore or a model of a broken bike. So hopefully we don't need a model of that. But these are things that run through my head, knowing that this is in the pipeline and like this is what's going to be my family's future. If there is any way, again, I don't know the process, but like during this whole thing, if there is any way to block that egress off and let McDonald's do their thing without coming onto Dayton, maybe I'll have less concerns, but I think it's a huge issue that this town needs to be prepared for. I'm not even getting into the sound, the pollution, crossing on Speedwell. Like, we are going to see drive-through traffic and delivery trucks on a residential street, and I don't think that we're actually wrapping our head around what that means. Again, I don't want to harp on my age, not even being 30 yet, but I know DoorDashers, I know Ubers, like, this is my generation.
We are not going away. We are going to continue ordering food for delivery. We're going to continue going to the green, which I know people in this room are familiar with, and not being able to drive home. We're going to need to get in Ubers to come home. These types of services, they need to be glued to this phone while they're driving. They're not going to their family's house. They're not going somewhere that they know. They are literally picking up food and bringing it somewhere that they don't know. So they need to be looking at their maps. Uber drivers, same thing. Who wants McDonald's? I don't know many people, but maybe they have been drinking all day, so they can't drive. They're in an Uber. When the Uber is dropping them off at McDonald's and getting in a car to go pick up their next passenger, they're looking at their phones. And I'm not saying that the problem would be solved if they just exit onto Speedwell, but if I am imagining somebody on their phone leaving onto Dayton, they're not going to care that there's a kid riding their bike. And I think it's just something that I wasn't ever allowed to talk about because the experts never brought it up, so I'm just airing that here to the room, and I really hope you guys can consider that, because I'm imagining the worst, and it's not great. So yeah, glued to our phones. The semi-truck thing, I felt very dismissed by the traffic expert, and I can go and look at the recording and read the transcript, share it with you guys, but me paraphrasing, it was kind of like, I said it was going to be dangerous. Semi-trucks have bigger blind spots, and then I was told there are no blind spots, or it's not a concern. It's a semi-truck. We drive by them. How many of you guys have had to honk because they're gonna hit you on 287 or 80 when they're moving over? Imagine that happening on your street with a kid. They don't see things in that certain area, which is why it's called a blind spot. And I also fearing the worst. The other thing I wanted to just quickly chat about was I don't see how the application effectively proved that the police efforts were going to have to go through the roof. Again, people come to McDonald's, they hang around, it's going to be all these different types of people. I know that I would be calling and complaining about some suspicious people or people that aren't usually hanging out on my street, but if they are, because there's a fast food restaurant, I don't know, I think that's an issue. I also didn't notice any police officers involved in this process, which I'm a little confused about. I didn't see them ever in this room. Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, I know you're aware, they didn't come in this building until I went to Mr. Mayor on December 17th, crying, telling him that some of the public felt intimidated by some of the people that were presenting the case for McDonald's. And I don't mean to paraphrase our conversation, so you can interrupt me, but you shared with me that you've had police presence at every meeting. And I said, yes, I've seen the car outside by the pickleball courts or behind the building in their car. They weren't hearing comments being made to the public outside the door. They weren't hearing what was going on outside in the parking lot. So multiple people, I don't want to think this is just a me thing, multiple people did not like that and they felt uncomfortable. So I went to the mayor and I asked him, can you please have police presence here? I think it was quoted that the police escorts were here for the McDonald's council, which I just want to make sure that is not true. We asked for it because we didn't feel safe leaving here, no matter how the vote was going to go. So I guess my ask here is, if there's going to be another application with such an interest from the public, if that could be considered maybe a baseline to have police officers near the entrance and exit without having somebody having to experience something that made them feel uncomfortable, that would be great. But I'm also hoping we don't have an application that one would need to feel that way again, or do business with people that would make somebody feel that way again. My handwriting got messy because my kid was like, Mom, are you gonna hang out with me tonight? And I said, no, not tonight, somewhere else to be. All right, I think, the crosswalk. I don't know if this is a question for this board or town council. You guys know I go to town council, so I can ask it there again, but I'm very confused about this crosswalk situation. We were told a few months ago before public hearings for McDonald's that Morris Plains got a grant. Again, I'm paraphrasing, so if I'm on the record, these are my words. that Morris Plains was awarded a grant. We were one of a handful of towns, and it was great that we got a grant to enhance the crosswalk that's currently by Hillview, and it's across Speedwell. I don't understand how that moves forward if this application moves forward too. We're not gonna have two crosswalks, cars can't even stop at whatever. So what happens to that money? Is it now McDonald's money that's paying for the crosswalk enhancements if they made men's meet with the DOT? Or were we waiting for McDonald's to pass and let them fund it so we can do something else with the grant money? Like, I'm not wrapping my head around that situation.
Jason, do you know about the grant?
So we are working with DOT to see what we're gonna do with those funds. Any improvements will be on the back of McDonald's. There are two crosswalks there already, so maybe I know the one set of blinking lights was for the McDonald's crosswalk, I'll say. The other one is gonna be for, the one that's over by, Provident, or the old Provident Bank right there, so. But we'll find some other use if the DOT allows us to use that money and that fund somewhere else.
Okay, so this application did not change the purpose of those funds?
No.
Okay, and as I'm planning for the worst case scenarios, because that's what I need to do, I just want to also talk to everyone and let you all know, I'm a good driver. I don't want to jinx anything, but if you look at my record, I'm a good driver. So if I am turning left out of Dayton, and I'm doing this because the traffic expert dismissed me. He was making jokes about McNuggets or whatever, I don't want to get into it, but if I'm making a left out of Dayton, I already have such an issue looking left, looking right, looking left, looking right. I need the Academy light to turn red, then I need to hope the intersection with East Hanover and Speedwell also turns red. I have just enough time, it's not 3 seconds or 7 seconds, whatever. I need to make sure there's no pedestrians walking across Dayton going to the train. I'm one of them, so I know that people do that. Or the USPS workers that also park their car elsewhere and walk to the post office. So I'm always checking for those pedestrians. But now I'm gonna see the gap, I'm gonna go, and then I'm gonna have to somehow instantly stop if somebody exits McDonald's on foot and tries to cross Speedwell. I don't wanna run anyone over, but logistically, like, I'm not understanding how, as a mom with screaming kids in the car, I don't even use music in my car. Like, these are things that will happen, and I would hate to put someone in danger, but I don't see how moving the crosswalk is safe for people leaving Dayton. So I don't know, maybe the egress not being on Dayton will help solve. Well, no, it won't solve that, to be honest with you. Like, do we just close Dayton and nobody can come in and out of it? I don't know, but I'm really nervous having to drive my kids to daycare. I don't want to disclose where, because I just don't. But I have to make a left onto Dayton multiple times a day. A left onto Speedwell from Dayton, and it's too much that I'm going to have to look at. Left, right cars, pedestrians already crossing, and now the crosswalk that's 40 feet or whatever is closer to me. I'm just saying that again, I'm nervous for it. And I know there's others on my street too, because there's multiple people that feel the same way. My last thing I will leave you with, thank you for entertaining me so long, is I just want to know from someone on the planning board what I can tell my son, who I brought to town council the other night, when he's not allowed to go outside during demolition. You guys saw him with his inhaler that he takes multiple times a day after his stunt in the PICU for a few months. He needs it to breathe with good air quality. So what am I telling him when he wants to go outside with his twin sister and older brother, and I say, hey, you can't, there's a big demolition happening, you won't be able to breathe, what should I tell him? Can someone give me an answer? Because I certainly can't think of one.
There will be a pre-construction meeting before any demolition. There will be dust control, there will be monitors. More than likely, I don't want to speak before the pre-construction meeting, but everything will be wet down so that there is no dust, and it will be monitored by our engineers and zoning officials.
And if there's an issue with that, I come to this board?
If there's an issue with that, you call the zoning, you can call the police if you have dust issues. There's many people that could resolve the issue more than immediately rather than coming to a meeting.
Okay. Well, with that, thanks for listening to me. Sorry I was rambling, but I think I needed to say what I said.
Ms. Bennett. So, first of all,
I want to commend you for coming up here in front of the planning board, coming up in front of the council. It's a very tough thing to do. And to watch you pour your heart out to the council and to the planning board. I used to live in that area, so I have a personal connection to it as well. Nothing I can do can change the vote, but as the council liaison, I hear you. And I will do my best to listen to the residents and try to represent you on the planning board and the council moving forward. So I know that's not a lot, but I hope that's some consolation. I do hear you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi, my name is Jim Hunt, at 44 Jaquai Avenue here in town. I just wanted to pick up on the process question for a minute to understand a little bit more. I think all of us have gotten a tremendous education about how these things work. And the question is this: the resolution that was passed at the last meeting was very, very general. It was basically we approve, and whatever variances they've requested, we approve. And if you read the resolution, I think if it's in verbatim, you can see how general it was. So my question is, who came up with the reasons for granting this when you drafted the resolution, which is going to be very lengthy, as I understand it? Who came up with those reasons? Were the affirmative voters responsible for the reasons that are applied? Is the applicant providing the reasons for the benefits for the approval? Who wrote the resolution and who came up with the detail of the resolution?
I wrote the resolution. It is up to the members to approve. It is, I can go find, but the standard way that resolutions are done is board members that vote on any application for the last 50 years. They don't, because they don't all jointly at the time that they're voting set down the reasons by which the board would agree. So I've written lots of resolutions, I've listened to the evidence, I know what would fit to justify. I don't vote though. I put together what evidence goes toward what standards have to get met. The votes on the resolution, that's the determination. Yes, that's right, or no, that's wrong.
So when the resolution's reviewed tonight, there's an opportunity to say, that doesn't sound quite right, and we need to modify the resolution.
The board members vote yes, no, or they can change it. That's what happens. That can always happen.
So there'll be discussion of the resolution.
I mean, that's it. You presume something will happen. There is the resolution can be voted on by the three members that voted. They can, once the resolution has been read, they can vote on it. They can vote yes, it's great, Andrew. They can vote no, at which time there'd be a lawsuit. But or things can get changed. And occasionally there's some.
But only by those three members.
That is correct. That is correct.
So
the logic in that again is that the members that voted yes, this resolution defines why they voted yes. It would be illogical for a person that said no to define the reasons why they voted yes. It doesn't work that way.
It makes sense. So I'm understanding that you, in effect, use boilerplate. What you usually do, you put into this resolution.
I would not say that.
Did you then pick from the record that was provided by the applicant? How did you choose what you put in the resolution? Were you influenced by the members who voted yes?
The transcripts and the notes.
Were you influenced by the members who voted yes when you drafted the resolution?
I don't think I'm influenced. I'm influenced by the record.
Well, did you have a discussion with any of the yes votes about what went into the resolution?
I do not discuss what's in that other than people see it they'll see drafts and they'll make changes, say you forgot this. That's lost to history, but yeah, you have to. But they'd be blindsided if they saw something not. So there's drafts, often drafts happen.
So the fact that it was very general is not unusual? And adding what you've added is not unusual to be added for a resolution?
I would have to disagree when you said things are general. So that's your subjective description of what happened.
Well, if you read the resolution that was passed, it sounded general just to many of us. So thank you for the explanation. I do want to mention one other thing. As the DOT discussion has been very active tonight, I want to tell everyone here that the DOT is now under the direction of the state government to take a very strong hand in safety for all users on roads like Speedwell Avenue. They have just tightened their complete streets policy, and in effect, what they're going to do now is tie most requests for state funding to the ability of the town to show them that they've determined it's safe for what they're doing. So I want you to know that there's a potential here with what happened with this safety issue that we know lies outside the property, and which the applicant has declared is the town's problem and not theirs, that we have every possibility of some of our requests for funding to be looked at with less than a positive eye in the future. Another unfortunate outcome of this passage. Thank you.
Special service, thank you.
I lower it too sometimes.
Hey guys, Carl Ring, R-I-N-G, 22 Dayton Road. I wanted to build on one thing that Carolyn mentioned earlier, just for general awareness. When you're coming out of Dayton, it is impossible to see in either direction without encroaching on, if not coming completely on the crosswalk across Dayton, because of blind spots on both sides. So that in and of itself, to me, is a general safety concern outside of the whole McDonald's application that I think the board should consider, the town should consider, and should look into. Unfortunately, I think some of the blind spot issues are telephone poles. One of them is also, I think, the Citizens Bank building. So I don't know how you're going to solve it, but my point is, it's already an unsafe intersection to begin with, so I'm just calling that into attention. I also wanted to follow up on something that I think Carolyn mentioned, maybe just offhandedly, but you know, in addition to the possibility of revisiting whether or not there needs to be an exit onto Dayton, which I also would encourage the board to reconsider in whatever possibility that can happen at this stage in the game. But also, I know that at the end of Canfield was dead-ended at some point several years ago, several decades ago, possibly at this point. Is that something that if this continues to pose a safety problem, we would be able to bring back to, and is it to the council, is it to the planning board, to request that Dayton similarly potentially be dead-ended just south of the Citizens Bank and a part of McDonald's eventually, possibly, hopefully not, property, such that no traffic, even though I know the angled lane is somehow magically going to keep anyone from turning right, but if that becomes a problem, how do we go about petitioning the board, the council, or anyone to say, you know what, let's just not let any traffic come down Dayton, let's, similar to Canfield, let's dead-end it, and everyone has to go out Academy.
Mr. Karr, is that something that would go back to the council?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we could always look at with the public safety, fire department, or police department, and with the council. So if it turns out to be a problem, it's something we can certainly look at.
Okay. Is there any formal process or request by which that happens, or?
You know, I think by just somebody sending in a letter or coming to speak to somebody, if there's an issue up there, I think that would be enough to start a process. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to leave it with all of you to actually think about that without someone having to come back and do that, because it sounds like the outcome of all of this is that as I said in my closing statement last year, the responsibility and the onus is now on us as citizens to police this town, these businesses. What do you all do for work? And that's what I'm asking.
Mayor Kamil Woronowicz, 3 Crescent Court West. Kamil, K-A-M-I-L, Woronowicz, W-O-R-O-N-O-W-I-C-Z. 3 Crestview Court West. So, thank you all for your, I apologize for being late. I did get an email thread from Mr. Mayor, which I was very thankful for. Again, it came from the applicant, so it's not an independent verification. But if most likely that meeting happened, I just have 2 more comments. Those verification meetings, I believe, require opening date or plan for stage of the development, including build out. year. That wasn't part of the minutes provided by the mayor. So it was some information that was missing. Another piece of information that was missing was, I think it was mentioned earlier about the plans that would affect the applicant or application, which was again talking about the crosswalk. So I'm not sure why some things would be missing from the minutes. Again, maybe I missed them because Mr. Mayor seems like the information was there. Maybe I missed them, but I would, again, would like to have independent verification. And then, right, if that meeting happened, it would have been nice to see what was truly discussed. Because if this information was missing, maybe something else was missing or was misrepresented, and not in exactly the way that our residents would like it to be presented to the DOT. Thank you.
Sorry, if I could just add, Tom Battagliese, Battagliese, 2 Cutler Road. I just wanted to add a clarifying process question to the comments or one of the issues that Carolyn Bennett raised. So the vote that was taken last time, did that include, there was no variance for the Dayton Road egress, right? Isn't that part of the town code that Dayton Road is not permitted to have delivery trucks driving on? And if so, I don't believe the application ever had an official variance made for that. So the vote that was taken last time seems premature if I'm understanding this whole thing correctly.
Mr. Ryan, do you remember that?
I have no comment on this.
I'll address it briefly. That the issue, and I don't have the language in front of me, essentially is no trucks over a certain weight on the road, but it doesn't prevent deliveries along these roads. And so it's an interpretation. Deliveries, the position, and if it's wrong, obviously people are free to challenge it, but I agree with it, is that this property is along, I think I wasn't blanking on the name of the road. Dayton Road. It's along Dayton Road.
It's a Speedwell address though, right?
But the ordinance does not say making a delivery to a property with an address on Dayton. It says properties along Dayton, so on the roads. It doesn't say with the property address on it. So, and I think members of the public, whoever, if you disagree, I understand that. But that's how it's worded. The operative language isn't addresses on a specific road. It's deliveries along the road. So
But you're saying that trucks cannot travel there over a certain weight. These trucks would be above that weight, right?
I'm saying the ordinance and the reason why it wouldn't be an impediment to this application is that it allows for kind of all-encompassing catch-all. It doesn't prevent deliveries along those properties along those roads. And so Dayton, properties on Dayton, or that is along Dayton, this most definitely touches Dayton. That's the whole point. It does. That's the issue. And a delivery, the testimony is that would be a delivery to a property that is adjacent to or on Dayton. It doesn't have a Dayton address, but that's not how the ordinance is written. The ordinance is written along that street. That's the issue.
So you're saying it doesn't need a variance, or should it have a variance in the application, and then if this is approved as part of that?
Well, it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be two things. It wouldn't be a variance because it's not the zoning code that regulates what you're talking about. That's something separate. But even more than that, I think the bigger question is, would a delivery to this property that also uses Dayton be prohibited by that specific provision? And it's my interpretation, and I believe, I don't think it's disputed by the professionals that looked at it, and Mr. Steck did not. Mr. Steck said it's policy, but it's no provision. There's lots of other issues with Mr. Steck, but it just did. That's my interpretation, because it doesn't say addresses on Dayton Road, it's properties along. It doesn't prevent deliveries to properties along Dayton Road.
And again, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me, but the operative language was not addresses only.
Okay, my gut feeling is this sounds like it needs further discussion from the rest of the board, but I'm not an expert here. It just seems, on this topic of how to interpret the code, it just seems like there should have been a variance submitted, in my opinion. I don't know what you do in this case, but it seems like there should be, wider discussion beyond your interpretation, because it does sound like it's not black and white as you're describing it. Right?
Oh, no, I think it is, and I think that the professionals that looked at it, I understand your point of view, but the people that did look at it, that's the determination that they came to. It's a different determination than what you're arguing.
Who were the professionals that you looked at? He just said he had no comment. Mr. Ryden said he had no comment. So what professionals actually looked at this aspect?
All the professionals looked at, and the professionals looked at. Your question is looked at and heard the testimony. It's professionals here, and it's the traffic consultant, Mr. Maltz. And I don't, I understand, and there was lots of testimony trying to get in, what's the address, what's the address, what's the address, but that's not how the ordinance is written. The ordinance allows for deliveries along that road. And those properties most definitely are along Dayton. They're along two different streets. It borders two roads.
All right. I don't know what else to add.
Who assigns it as a 4-ton limit? I'm sorry. Who assigns Who assigns this as a 4-ton limit for Dayton?
I think there's a reference to the ordinance provision that addressed several roads in town.
Yeah, I've seen this on other places, but does that come from the DOT? Does that come from Marsh Plains?
It's a local ordinance. It's a local ordinance.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It is a local ordinance.
Hi. So yeah, just to piggyback on the last discussion, another interpretation of that, I'm sure residents of Dayton would take that. Along Dayton Road, meaning any address along Dayton Road, maybe around Academy or whatever that other street is that's only accessible through Dayton or near the post office, but not necessarily if you already have a driveway from another road, main road like Speedwell, to then require variance to go into Dayton, because it's not making deliveries along Dayton. That's the only way to get there along Dayton Road, right? So again, it's probably due to interpretation, but it's not the only interpretation. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Jessica Williams, 22 Stony Brook Road. So you indicated that the Speedwell Avenue egress and ingress for delivery trucks was open to interpretation.
I'm sorry, excuse me?
That it was open to interpretation, correct? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm short. Thank you. That the Dayton Avenue ordinance was open to interpretation, correct?
I gave you what my understanding, and I give the board my understanding of whether or not the specific ordinance would prohibit the presence of trucks that had delivered to McDonald's to be on Dayton. And I'm not being facetious. People can say, I interpreted it a different way, so if you say open to interpretation, people can say lots of things. At some point, you have to give an interpretation when somebody says, this action is barred by this ordinance. By reading the ordinance and making a judgment, yes, it is or it is not, I am necessarily giving an interpretation. I don't believe the other interpretations are correct, but that's why there's courts, and I believe that that's a correct read of that, because it doesn't say street addresses. It says, and again, I don't have it in front of me, I believe it says along those roads. So, anyway, so listening to your question again.
So my point is, that was put in place to protect the residents, correct?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't want to pretend.
Okay. But we have to assume that that was put in place to protect the residents. And yet, if it is open to interpretation, our members of our community are interpreting that on the side of the applicant and not on the side of the residents, which it was intended to protect. Thank you.
Do you need it now? You want it now? Okay. So we're going to take a break. And we're going to take a break for 12 or whatever, 13 minutes till 20 after. Is that okay? Is that good? Okay.
What are you doing with the stream? You pause it or you just?
Let it roll. I can mute it because there's nothing really happening, so I'll just mute the stream. to the microphone. Please. Talk to yourself.
Okay, you ready? Okay. State your name,
Okay.
last name.
Yep.
Battagliese, Battagliese, 2 Cutler Road, it's UTLER. So, Mr. Brewer, I just wanted to, since we didn't have the language up before, I just wanted to read the ordinance that I was referring to. So it specifically states, trucks over 4 tons gross weight are hereby excluded from the following designated streets or portions of streets. And there's multiple streets listed, including Dayton Road, which states the entire length of that location. So I'm wondering what, how does that not require a variance then, when it's pretty straightforward there?
Variance, you can only give from the zoning ordinance. That's not in the zoning ordinance, so that's a technical reason it couldn't require variance, because this board only has the ability to give a variance from something in the zoning ordinance. That's in the general police power. Because something it's different, so they wouldn't have the ability to. So really, I think the question you're asking, I can phrase it another way, is how can you approve a site plan that, and this is your reading of that, how do you approve a site plan that allows traffic that is not supposed to be on certain road? That's not a variance question, it's a different question about the site plan. But I think the biggest part is the part that you didn't read about the deliveries. That's a catch-all that says this doesn't prohibit, and then I don't know what it is, you have to read it. That's the reason. It's not the initial portion of the provision that says doesn't apply, or that this won't prohibit deliveries along the street. I don't have it in front of me, so if you read that part, that's really where it comes from.
Okay, but it says, okay, nothing within the section shall be construed as preventing such trucks from making deliveries of merchandise or other property along streets from which such trucks are excluded, or any streets reached thereby, or as excluding from any street in the borough. Any trucks used by public utility companies in connection with the construction, installation, operation, or maintenance of public utility facilities, or from or to any premises within the borough on said streets, or any streets reached thereby, upon which an authorized operation or activity is being permitted in accordance with ordinances and regulations of the borough. That's the part you're referring to, I guess?
I think the first clause, not that all the other stuff, not the first clause.
Okay. And so you were saying that that was your interpretation, which you were saying that the ordinance is a bit ambiguous?
I don't think it is ambiguous. I think it's a catch-all phrase that says it doesn't prevent deliveries on those roads. So I don't think it is ambiguous at all. And there's another tweak that, again, sometimes I go too far. Something that prohibits, that would be in the police power code that would result in a fine or something along those lines. We'd say that's something along the prohibition on the criminal statute or something along those lines. It has to be utterly clear that it is. That's kind of a protection to somebody that is a defendant, that is getting punished by the state or the municipality. That provision that says nothing prevents deliveries along those roads is a catch-all, so that's accepted. If you're delivering, that doesn't apply. It's essentially what it says. I don't think that is vague. I don't think it is open to interpretation. That's the catch-all it would be. If you're delivering along those roads, it doesn't apply.
Was the purpose, I mean, these are residential streets, I think. If I'm looking down here, every one of these that's in the list is purely residential. So do you think that exclusion about deliveries was intended for commercial, full-time commercial activities, or to protect the residential nature of those streets?
So what was the question?
So the streets that are listed in this ordinance are not commercial, it's not commercial zoned streets, right? So Dayton Road is a residential street. Would it be then correct to assume that the reason for this ordinance was to protect the residences as opposed to commercial activity? And I guess was Friendly's allowed to make, I don't know, I don't live there, so was Friendly's allowed to make deliveries or utilize Dayton Road for truck access?
A whole bunch of things in your question here.
Yeah.
Maybe taking up too much of the board's time, but you stop me, rein me in if I am. No matter what the potential purpose was, there was apparently a huge recognition, it doesn't apply to deliveries on those streets, which would indicate, and it doesn't really matter what the intention was because you have to apply what the words are. That's all that this board or the police that issue tickets or anybody else can do. It doesn't apply to deliveries. So if you want to look at the intention, yeah, generally they don't want big trucks, but if you're delivering, you get an exception, you do. That's just how they made that understanding. So, you know, people are gonna need deliveries. And so sometimes it's gonna apply to truck, and it would only be important and only necessary to give that catch-all exception. It doesn't apply to deliveries if they understood that that's gonna be deliveries over 4 tons, because under 4 tons isn't regulated. So they were saying, there's gotta be really big trucks, and if they're making deliveries, this doesn't apply. That's what they wrote. So going behind, yeah, there's some ideas about it, but there was an overriding exception. If it's a delivery, it's not prohibited. That's how they chose to write it. Sorry about my grammar.
Okay, so it seems ambiguous to me. As I understand, when a law is ambiguous, you're supposed to look at the legislative history to better understand the intent of the law. Did you, as you're making your interpretation here, did you do that?
No, because I don't think it's ambiguous. I don't. Yeah, I think deliveries are allowed. End of story. That's what, you know, they said you can't do it. Deliveries, you can do it. That's how it's written.
So if this is not a zoning ordinance, then are you the one to determine this, or is the town attorney, and who is in charge of that ordinance?
Oh, that's a police power. That would be the police. If someone believes that there is activity on a road that is in violation of an ordinance, then you can tell the police. That's not something, this board can't give tickets for things like that. If there's
right. No, I mean in determining the black and white interpretation of this law, who is, you just said that this is not a zoning ordinance, so you're in charge of the planning board from a legal perspective, right? So who is the defining
anything in the police power? You don't go get, nobody gives you advisory opinions. Hey, you can or you can't. Either the police, you can call up the police department. You can say, I believe that this activity is taking place in violation of one of the local ordinances, and the police can either enforce it, and they can say, yeah, that's prohibited, or they can choose not to enforce it if they say, no, that's permitted. But it's an enforcement action. The enforcement of your local police ordinances is done by the police, or because that's activity on a road. That would be the police if they believe that that was a violation of their ordinances.
Mr. Battagliese, is your question about who creates the ordinances and what's inside of them? Is that your question?
I think.
Or is it about enforcement of the ordinances?
No, it's not about enforcement. Okay. I think the whole point I was trying to raise after Carolyn spoke was that it seemed to me that the vote in December on this whole application was made, maybe not completely considering the ordinances that are on the books, and this is one of them that I thought would have needed a variance or needed some kind of wave of the hand to say, hey, yeah, normally we don't allow delivery trucks on Dayton over 4 tons. In this case, we as a board feel that this is fine, and I'm assuming that this is not in the memorialization statement that's going to be read, because it was not, part of the application in terms of specific variances or specific, I don't know what you would call it then, if it's not a variance, something going outside of the ordinance on the books. So that's really what I'm trying to question.
Yeah, understood. So just to clarify for you and everybody else who might have a question, right? The ordinances are created by the council, right? Voted on by the council. So it's ultimately up to the council to look at that. Can I ask which ordinance number you have that you're referencing?
It's Article 5, limiting use of streets to certain vehicles, and it's specifically 22-5 under Article 5.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have anything else. I'm just, we're about to hear you vote on the memorialization, and to me it just seems premature. I'm raising the flag, so to speak. I don't know what you do in this case in terms of the board and how to move forward. Thank you.
This is Kamil Woronowicz again from 3 Preston West. It was definitely helpful having heard the actual text and not just assuming anything, because you're right, the first part does say something about deliveries, but the second part, I think is a very important part, that mentions it has to be reachable or accessible by Dayton Road. And we all know that driveway on Dayton Road is one way out. It is not reachable by Dayton Road. Is that correct? And if that's the case, if it's truly unequivocal, that driveway cannot be accessed for deliveries. And Dayton Road cannot be accessed for deliveries because that address is not, the location is not reachable by Dayton Road. It's one way out. Correct? And therefore, there needs to be some changes. Thank you.
Hi, Carolyn Bennett, 19 Dayton Road. I forgot to ask one question kind of related to process, so thank you for entertaining me a second time. What happens to the current tenants that are not in the friendly lot but in the lot adjacent to them? If this passes, do they get kicked out of their leases? Do they get paid? Like what happens to them?
That's not something that the board does.
So you guys can approve an application to rip down a building where there's businesses being run out of? I don't mean to sound stupid. I'm just like, I know Lush somehow got the inside scoop that this was coming, so they moved downtown. I don't know what happens to the businesses that are there.
So I know Lush moved, right?
Yeah, I don't know what triggered that.
And then another one I know moved to 520 Speedwell Avenue. I'm not sure what's left in there as of now. So they've already found new spaces in the borough.
All of them?
I don't know what's left in there now. I know 2 of them, and then I don't know what's left, 1 or 2. So
So what happens to them then?
hopefully they'll find new spaces, and hopefully the applicant is helping them find those new spaces.
That kind of concern. So is there a chance that there's people just doing business out there that you guys aren't aware of? I don't know, like I walk there all the time, and I know that there's businesses being done there. I don't know if it's the Willow Tree or the limo service, like, I don't know what is actually still there, but I don't know if I should be concerned that I'm seeing businesses.
If I can answer quickly, the board, the only thing the board's allowed to do is the owner of the property said, I want to sign off and allow this application to go forward. Whether or not it can get built because there are still tenants is a contractual obligation between the owner and tenants that may be on there. But the board can't, lots of applications come when there are existing tenants because the owner wants to change the use. But the board can't say, no, you get the tenant, you have to get them in here and give permission to do what you want with your property. What an owner is allowed to be on his property, it's a matter of the lease contracts, and they'll get dealt with. But the board can't get every single tenant in here and say, and actually they don't have permission. If an owner puts in an application, the board has to hear it. So it's not saying they're going to kick them out, and no one's going to get killed during construction and thrown out of their office.
Well, hopefully not.
Well, no, it's a contractual issue. The owner wants to change what's there, so the owner can seek approval, and then going forward, there's going to, I shouldn't say obviously, but there's going to be a pre-construction meeting, and you're not allowed to tear down a building with a person in it or an operating. That's just not allowed.
No, I know that.
It's a contractual
I feel like
issue.
a lot of people have been calling them 2 vacant lots, and that's not the case. So it's either 1, it's supposed to be vacant and it's not, and I need to call the police, or 2, we need to talk about that it's actually not vacant.
Oh, no, I think they were saying that the Friendly's was vacant.
Okay. So the owner, is the owner of that second lot legally allowed to receive information that's, like, how do they know that all of this is happening? That's legal for them to know?
The owners,
Like, I guess, I don't know, I'm just imagining there's gotta be a lot of behind the scenes conversations happening on to proactively plan this. I'm not sure my question, but you answered my first one, and my thoughts are gonna keep going, so stay tuned till next meeting.
Craig Moran, M-O-R-A-N, 7 Hillview Avenue. Clearly, I'm one of the people that is disappointed by the decision that was reached last month. One of the things that I'm just so shocked and amazed by is that the 4 people that shot down this application were so clear in that there were questions and concerns that needed to be addressed. They felt so strongly about it that they could not support this. Yet one of the deciding votes that was cast to approve this prior to the vote was so emphatically stated that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I guess all the questions have been answered and just yes, and it was done. I don't understand how that happens. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Close. So we'll close the comments from the public. Next on the agenda, approval of minutes for December 9th, 16th, 18th of 2024. Quick question. Can I do these all at one time, or do they have to be done separately?
as long as everybody was here for all 3 of them, you could do it, and they could all vote. I believe everybody was. Actually, only the people that were here during those meetings can vote, but yes, you can do them all 3. But I believe that there may have to be one amendment to, yeah.
So do them all together?
You can.
Okay. And in addition, then, Andrew Wolf and Bill Houston will abstain.
That's correct.
Because they were not here.
Can't approve minutes if you weren't there.
Got it. Okay. So, approval of, can I have a motion to approve the minutes for December 9th, December 16th? Yes.
Chairman, I have a change. There's a correction.
Okay. So which set?
December 9th,
Okay.
page 14, down at the bottom. Mr. Drexler, I make a motion to deem the application complete. That's incorrect. He made a motion to deem the application incomplete.
Excuse me, that's for 109 Mountain Way?
No, that's, oh. Is that
What application are you
109
talking about?
Mountain Way?
109 Mountain Way, or is it,
Yes, yes.
Karen, you have that? You have that?
I have it, yes, but it will have to be corrected in the transcript.
Correct.
Pardon me? That's it for that? That's it for that, minute, for those minutes, yeah.
December 18th. December 18th.
December 18th?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, December 18th, there's no page numbers on here, so all I can tell you.
Wait, I think you have to do them one at a time. You have to approve them one at a time, the minutes.
Together.
If they're all, if everyone's here.
Oh, okay, well, there's more changes.
Okay, so let's.
Itemize.
Do one at a time.
Just itemize. 9, 16, 18.
All right, so December 9th, Sue, you have those changes. Are there any other changes
Correct.
for December 9th? There are more changes.
No, not for December 9th.
Okay. Are there any other changes from the board on December 9th? So with that, can I get a motion to approve the December 9th, 2024 meeting minutes as amended tonight?
So moved.
I'll second it, assuming that page 14 gets adjusted.
Amended, correct. Roll call, please.
Mr. Woronowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly? Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
And Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Okay. Minutes for December 16th. Are there corrections to that?
Yes, I have corrections to that. The transcript incorrectly states that the meeting was held on Tuesday, December 16th, 2024. In fact, it was Monday, December 16th, 2024. There are two transcripts. The one is prior to the McDonald's hearing, and the second one also it needs to be corrected for the McDonald's transcript.
Karen, you have that? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the December 16th meeting minutes from 2024 as amended?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Woronowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Yes.
And Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Okay, so for the December 18th meeting minutes,
Yep.
Ms. Stecker.
Yep, there's a correction. There's no page numbers, so it is, I think it's the 4th page from the end. The vote was not captured correctly. Let me just see if it's that page. My vote was missed in the transcription. So it has to be corrected.
Okay, excuse me, I didn't hear what you said, I apologize.
The minutes, the transcription is incorrect. It's missing my vote.
For McDonald's.
Yep, December 18.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's the last one. Yeah.
Okay, Karen, you have that?
I have that, and I will, have to tell Michelle to correct this.
Okay. So can I get a motion to approve the December 18th?
I have a correction.
You have a correction?
Chairman McCluskey made a statement. I just want to correct the record, Mr. Kelly. Drive-through restaurants were proposed for the B2 zone on the very first spreadsheet that the Master Plan Review Committee received from the Council Business Development Committee for the B2 zone. Okay, that was back in November of 2021. First of all, the Master Plan doesn't propose anything. It only provides what is permitted in the usage. So restaurants, drive-through restaurants were permitted. I have the worksheet that was given to us on May 5th of 2023. Originally, it was stated it was just restaurants, taverns, and cafes. What was added was restaurant, restaurant bar or tavern, restaurant drive-in, restaurant drive-through. And the final approval for the council, I believe, was done in November of 2023, not 2021.
Well, it was 2022, actually, and I misspoke. It was not 2021. The first spreadsheet that we got that came from the Business Development Committee had it on it.
I have it right in front of me, Sue, and
What
maybe you
is
ought to
it?
speak to the planner, because she said it was 2023 was approved. I don't know where you're talking from.
I have the papers home, I didn't bring them with me. It doesn't matter, we're talking about the minutes.
Are you still stating that the master plan proposes uses for the town?
Excuse me?
You stated that the master plan proposes the uses. You're saying that we propose that the
No,
use?
no, I did not say that. I said that the Business Development Committee proposed that use at the very first meeting that we had, that they had recommended them, and Liz had given us that spreadsheet, and it had it on.
I have it here, it's right here, it shows it's the first time it's done, it's May 5th.
No, the first one was back
2023.
in November, I'm sorry, it was back in November. I have it at home. Ron, if you want me to prove it to you, I will, but we're talking about the minutes here tonight, not about this discussion that you and I are having.
Have it your way, Sue.
I will correct the transcripts according to this, and all of these corrections will be posted into the new transcript that's coming out tonight. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, I will correct my copy to state this information, but all of the corrections will be stated in the minutes tonight.
Okay, but I just want to pipe in a little bit. There's been a lot of discussion. I don't know if specific language has been recommended to be changed. I would defer to the chair on whether or not it was. There was a lot of colloquy going back and forth.
So with Ron, the references you made are in the meeting minutes from the 18th? Okay. So.
What's there? What should be
Yeah,
changed?
exactly. So can you provide clarity on the specifics of what needs to be changed?
Okay, that's, yes. I'm talking about the 12-month.
No, but I want to make sure Karen has them so that they get accounted for, correct?
All right. I'm just talking about the minor changes, meaning like 12-9, 109 Mountain Way, incomplete rather than complete. 12-16, Monday rather than Tuesday. 12-18, Ms. Steckert's vote was missed, okay? So that's what I'm saying. This situation here with the master plan, maybe we could table that till next meeting?
But the master plan as part of the meeting notes from, the meeting minutes from the 18th.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we can, okay. Okay, so again. Yes, sir.
This is part of our record in the case, so it benefits everybody that we have a good record and a good transcript. We can't change the transcript. She said what she said, you said what you said, right? Is that accurate? Yeah, so the transcript remains, whether or not who's right or wrong, you guys gotta decide that. But the transcript has to stay the way it is, right? Mr. Kelly, are you asking that anything be changed?
That's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you.
If it is incorrect, as Ms. Stecker, the transcript says she did not vote, that has to.
No, 100% agreed. I'm just talking about this last colloquy about who was right about the master plan notes and all this other stuff. Like, the transcript says what it says, and no one here is saying that it should be corrected on that point. He just disagrees.
I think it's sit down. I think that's being addressed where the question was posed after the colloquy. What was stated and what do you believe should be changed? And I don't believe anything is going to be changed from that colloquy. Let's defer back to the chair. I didn't hear a specific language being proposed to be changed about the colloquy.
And I agree with that. So what I asked Mr. Kelly was to make sure that Karen had his comments. Not for change, but to make sure the record was correct. Or the transcript was correct.
So, Mr. Kelly, are you saying that you made comments during the meeting that are not in the transcript?
What I'm saying is she quoted 2021.
No, I understand. I think she's wrong. But are you saying there should be more information in the transcript than there is now?
Let's stop.
I just think.
Let's stop.
nobody should speak. Stop. I think that right now, we have for the December 18th, one change that we know of that's been proposed, hasn't been voted on yet. Ms. Deckard actually voted. Number two, Mr. Kelly has started talk, but I think leave it here. Is there specific language in the transcript that you believe should be changed? And it's not on the merits of the statements that were made, but the minutes are only supposed to be what was said, not whether or not it was right or wrong. So if there is specific language in the transcript, you can read a sentence and say, no, what was said was actually X, not Y. That's, I think, fair game for amending the minutes. Arguing about the merits of what was said, is it supposed to be just what was said, not if you agree with it?
Basically, it's semantics. She said drive-through restaurants were proposed for the B2. They're not proposed, they're saying they're permitted.
But I think the question is, did she say proposed? If she said proposed, then
It's what's written on
then the
the
minutes should not
transcript.
be, then the minutes shouldn't be changed.
I'm reading this from the transcript. So all I'm saying is that the date should be changed to the accurate date when it was actually approved by the council.
No.
No?
The worst thing is that's not what was said. So even, you may be correct, but that's not what was said, so it cannot be corrected in the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So that's clear as mud, I think. So, Karen, you have everything?
Yes.
For one, yeah, the one
And
change.
these will also, words will be included in, or Laura, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, you will have these corrections within this transcript, correct?
Okay.
And I will correct my copy in the office stating these three things.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 18th, 2024 as amended this evening?
Yes, so, second.
Roll call, Karen?
Mr. Baldwin,
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia,
Yes.
Mrs. Decker,
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Bezold,
Yes.
and Mayor Karr.
Yeah.
Okay. Applications. The first application, PB-4-24, which is R. Keller Construction, 109 Mountain Way, lot. Yes, I was going to read this and then excuse me. So, block 67, lot 7.01. Yes, Mr. Bezold.
And the minutes reflect that Mr. Bezold is stepping out of the room.
Okay. I don't think I see anyone representing the applicant here tonight. No. So, Mr. Ryden and Liz, you guys, last set of correspondence from the applicant, you deemed incomplete. Is that still the case?
So, Mr. Chairman, is the mic here on? Mr. Chairman, this application was previously deemed incomplete at the December 9th meeting, as you recall. The applicant subsequently submitted revised application and other information, which we then reviewed, and I made that report in my December 30th, 2024 letter. In that letter, I find that the application is still incomplete. There's a number of issues which I will detail. So there's two checklists involved for these applications. One is checklist A for the development, and the other is checklist F for variances. So under checklist A, item 1, which requires a complete application form, the item number 14 in the application form is not complete, it's not addressed at all. That's an outstanding item of direct incompleteness, if you will. It's not a waiver issue. The other two items are in checklist F, that's 23A. They haven't provided the height of the proposed building, and 24E, which requires elevations at the corners of the proposed buildings and pavement, etc. That information has not been provided. So on that basis alone, the application still stands to be incomplete. Now, there are 17 waiver requests that have been made by the applicant. Of those 17, I find that we can agree, or I can recommend that the board accept those waiver requests for 15 of those. But 2 of them, I would recommend they not accept those waiver requests. So if you like, I can detail the specific items here for you, or you can just have my letter as the record for the meeting, however you like to do that.
So I do have some questions, but I would like more detail,
Okay.
for sure. However, since the applicant is not here, can we deem this?
The applicant's not here. There could be a motion to deem the application incomplete for the reasons set forth in Mr. Ryden's letter report.
Correct.
And requesting the information, the more information on the waivers and the other information that was set forth in Mr. Ryden's report.
Correct. So that's what I would opt to want to do tonight, because we are already 10 o'clock and we need to work through the McDonalds. So,
that's why I asked if you would want me to go into detail.
Exactly. I initially did, but I don't now. So, but I do want to go on record saying that where there are waivers requested, I would like to have some more information. So we can talk about that another time, or...
Well, so the ones that we're recommending, I don't believe we need any further information. For the other 2, those 2 that I'm not recommending are item 24F and checklist F for colored photographs within 200 feet of the PQ, the property in question. They requested a waiver. I'm recommending that waiver not be granted. I believe Liz also is not recommending that be granted.
Agreed.
And then, so on that basis, if you don't grant that waiver, that's another area that's incomplete. And then item 24, which requires all kinds of neighborhood information within 500 feet of the PQ. They're requesting waivers for all the items. The one which is 24G3, that has to do with building coverage, I'm recommending that not be granted, because this application has a variance for building coverage, so it will be important to know what the area surrounding it, the typical building coverages in that area. So we should have that information.
Okay. The other thing though, that I guess what I'm getting to, and this is a very simplistic example, but within this checklist A, there's tree removal permit, waiver requested. I want to know why. If I look at it's 38C, item 38C, tree removal permit, waiver requested. May seem very insignificant, but I want to know why. Is there no tree there?
Well,
And it's not required, or the lot is less than an acre, so it's not required? Or is there another reason? I'm sorry.
This is not a development application, it's a subdivision application to create 2 lots out of 1. So those items, wetlands disturbance, soil disturbance, tree removal, stormwater management, all those things are not relevant here, because there's nothing proposed in that regard. We simply want to create 2 lots out of 1.
So can we say that? Can you say that in your letter so that it's identified as such? Because I'm not sure everyone maybe realizes that.
Well, I just said it for the record here.
Oh, okay, all right. But I'm saying though, in a letter that you provide us, is that something that you
want that subsequent to this letter here?
Sure.
That's fine.
Sure. I think it just adds clarity, in my opinion.
But that's the basis for would be my recommendation for the basis for those waivers, because they're not relevant here. They're not part of the application.
So can we say that? Can we say that they're not relevant?
I understand. I'm saying it now for the record.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else?
If you like, I can make a subsequent report that states that.
I think since the applicant since the applicant's not here and this is not complete, they have work to do. I think on the next iteration of your letter to us, you can do that. if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, does the board have any other comments to that?
A lot of times when they go over the report, when the applicant is here, that'll be covered when they go through.
And
Check this.
okay, and I guess that's okay too. I guess what I'm trying to get at is limiting the questions that maybe we would have that chew up the time. Right? And maybe I'm wrong and I'm still not seeing the bigger picture. But in my view, the more information that comes in ahead of time that we can address, it's less time that we have to ask him questions, and it's less time that maybe eventually the public then asks questions. Maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture, but that's kind of my view. Fair? Sure. Does that sound fair? Okay. Liz, I guess I would ask the same thing of you. Not necessarily go through yours here because of time, but I would say the same thing, that if there are waivers requested, I would like to see a little bit more information.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make 2 points regarding my letter. With checklist F, item 13, requesting a copy of the zoning officer's decision. My understanding is there was no decision by the zoning officer, so that can be the waiver request and it can be recommended. The other item to note is 24G3, which is asking the applicant to provide building coverage and approximate total principal building floor area, all floors within 500 feet. Something that we've done at the zoning board level, where we've dealt with these applications more regularly, is limited the 500 feet from the subject property to 200 feet, because it seemed to be too onerous on the property owner to do 500 feet. So that may be something that the board would want to consider.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Additional questions or comments? No? So then, can I have a motion to deem this application incomplete?
Yes, for the reasons set forth in that report.
For the reasons set forth in that report.
A motion.
Motion. Second?
Second, but can I also state, do you want to change it from 500 feet to 200, which Liz stated? That's what the Board of Adjustment is doing now. It's instead of 500 feet around surrounding the property, they're going to 200. Maybe Liz, you want to explain it a little better?
Sure. First of all, it's a fairly onerous task to put on a single-family homeowner, and 500 feet is even, more onerous. So I think that the zoning board has found that 200 feet provides the information that is necessary and informative for the board. It's up to you, though. The checklist says 500.
Checklist, you can grant waivers from. Requirements cannot be changed except by ordinance. Checklists are set by ordinance. You can give waivers, you cannot change the terms of the checklist. The municipality has to do that by ordinance.
All right, so you can though, I think, grant a waiver from the 500 feet and give it for 200.
So what is the board? Well, Jason, you, as the mayor, you have experience here. What's your thought?
I mean, I think in a neighborhood like that, I think 200 feet is plenty in that area. And I think 500 feet maybe out of his area a little bit, so I think 200 feet is adequate.
Mr. McCluskey, you also have experience. What's your take? You also have experience on the board with things. What is your take on 200, granting 200? What do you think?
200 feet is sufficient. This is a minor subdivision.
I just want to be sure.
Well, that's absolutely, and I would always go along with the recommendation of our planner. That's why we hire her.
We do, but we've also heard a lot of comments on the lack of, and I'm not saying that there was, but part of the
my experience, which is many, many years of experience, we would definitely defer to the planner on this very minor
It doesn't
item.
matter, let me explain, that this is a fairly onerous task to put on a single-family homeowner in general.
Yes.
We're asking within 500 feet, it's a lot, and oftentimes the people don't have attorneys representing them, they're doing it themselves, and they're having to provide and do calculations that are not their expertise, they're often not correct, and it requires them to do an OPA request to get the tax records for all the properties within 500 feet. So in deference to the board and to give you all a sense of what the impervious coverage is in the neighborhood, so you can compare it to what is being requested here, we're not saying to waive the entire requirement, but we're saying try to make it a little less onerous on somebody who is a single family homeowner.
I can agree with that. I agree with that.
So that would be the only waiver you would be dealing with in this resolution.
Okay.
I just want to be clear on that. We're not acting on any other waiver request.
Okay.
Yet it's incomplete. Why is all this discussion?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Okay. So can I have a motion to deem the application incomplete?
Yes.
With the 200 rather than the 500.
With the amendments that have been discussed.
Second?
Second? Second. Roll call, Karen?
All right. Mr. Aldenblick?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Deckard?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Walt?
Yes.
And Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay, and one has to go get
So-
Mr. Bezold back?
Hey, Steve, can you go get John?
Yeah.
Okay, the next application, PB-1-24, McDonald's USA LLC, 415 and 435 Speedwell Avenue, Block 23, lots 4 and 5. So just to level set a little bit, this is to certify the McDonald's resolution. Mr. Brewer will read the entire document. Once complete, only the board members who voted yes on the application will vote to approve. Of the 5 members who voted yes, 3 remain on the board for 2025. Marianne Stecker, Suzanne McCluskey, and Mayor Karr are those members. So with that,
Planning Board Resolution Number 25-05, resolution for preliminary and final site plan approval, merger, design waiver, and variance relief. Planning Board, Borough of Morris Plains. Application number PB-1-24. Applicant McDonald's USA LLC. Premises 415 and 435 Speedwell Avenue, Block 23, lots 4 and 5. Whereas McDonald's USA LLC, the applicant or developer, made application to the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains, the board, for preliminary and final site plan, variance, and waiver approval for its proposal to merge 2 existing lots and construct a McDonald's restaurant, the development, and various site modifications on property designated as Block 23, lots 4 and 5, on the tax map of the Borough of Morris Plains, commonly known as 415 and 435 Speedwell Avenue, the property or the site, where the property is owned by Morelli Morris Plains LLC and Morelli Morris Plains II LLC. And whereas applicant published a hearing notice in an official newspaper of the board and provided notice of the application to those required to receive the same in accordance with the law, and filed proofs of publication and of service with the board secretary. And whereas the board determined that proper notice had been given to establish jurisdiction to consider the application and held hearings on the application on September 16th, October 21st, November 12th, December 9th, November 12th, and November 18th, and December 9th, 16th, and 18th, 2024, reviewed reports filed by the applicant and reviewed the reports of the board engineer, William Ryden, P.E., and the board planner, Elizabeth C. Lahaney, P.P., and board traffic consultant, Harold K. Moltz, P.E., P.P., all reports attached here too, considered the questions and comments of the public, and considered the testimony and exhibits presented by the applicant, and whereas public hearings were held during which Frank J. Vitolo, Esquire, represented applicant. Whereas, after carefully considering the evidence presented by the applicant, the board now makes the following factual findings and conclusions. 1. As requested in its application, the applicant seeks the following relief from the board. A. Variance from section 13-5.7A to permit 32 parking spaces, inclusive of the 2-space electric vehicle credit and 2 ADA spaces, where 41 parking spaces are required. 2, section 13-5.7B1 to permit 0 loading spaces where 1 loading space is required. 3, section 13-5.8C1 1.1G to permit approximately 46.8 total square feet of wall signs on the south facade of the building, where the total area of wall signs on a single wall shall not exceed 1 square foot of sign area for each linear foot of store frontage, but not more than 40 square feet. 4, from section 13-5.8C1 1.1H to permit 3.5 foot tall McDonald's logos wall signs along Speedwell Avenue, the southern facing facade, and the eastern building facade, where the height of a wall sign is limited to 2 feet. 5, from section 13-5.8C1 1.1A to permit 1 facade sign on the rear of the building, eastern building facade that is 14 square feet, where no signs are permitted on the rear of the building, which does not face on a street. 6, from section 13-5.8C7 to permit 5 freestanding signs in the drive-through area where 1 freestanding sign is permitted. 7, from section 13-5.8C7 7.2 to permit freestanding signs in the drive-through area where freestanding signs are only permitted in the front yard. 8, from section 13-5.8C7 7.3 to permit freestanding signs totaling approximately 75.4 square feet, where a maximum of 20 square feet is permitted. 9, section 13-5.8C7 7.7 to permit freestanding signs comprised of aluminum material and red or yellow in color, where freestanding signs are required to be constructed of painted wood, wood-like, or wood-appearing material, and shall be painted in dull or matte finish colors with contrasting colors for lettering and other message elements. Section 13-4.1C2F to permit no or limited screening of the off-site parking spaces along the front yard facing Dayton Road, where all off-street parking and loading areas are required to be screened by a fence, wall, or landscaping when facing premises situated in any residential zones. B, waiver from section 13-4.14C 2.2DI of the revised ordinances of the Borough of Morris Plains, revised ordinances, which requires parking spaces to be at least 200 square feet, at least 10 feet by 20 feet. The applicant requests a design waiver to permit 9-foot by 18-foot parking spaces. 2, section 13-4.14C2F of the revised ordinances, which requires screening with a fence no higher than 6 feet, whereas a fence of 8 feet in height is proposed. 3, section 13-4.14C 2.1 and 13-4.14B 3.6, which requires a rounded 25-foot radius at street intersections where none is provided. C, the applicant further requests that the board grant any other waivers, deviations, and/or variances which it may deem necessary, desirable, or appropriate with regard to the aforesaid application. 2, at the public hearings, documents A1 through A10 and O1 through O6 were marked as exhibits and entered into evidence. 3, in addition to the marked exhibits, the applicant submitted and the board considered the following documents which were made part of the application. A, application for development and associated checklist E, preliminary and final site plan. B, certified list of property owners in the borough of Morris Plains within 200 feet of the property. C, certification that taxes are paid on each of the 2 tax lots. D, draft notice of hearing to property owners within 200 feet of the property. E, draft notice of hearing to newspapers. F, plans entitled preliminary and final site plan for McDonald's restaurant, lots 4 and 5, tax map sheet number 2, latest revision date 2/2023, 415 and 435 Speedwell Avenue, US Route 202, Borough of Morris Plains, Morris County, New Jersey, prepared by Dynamic Engineering Consultants, PC, Tiago F. Duarte, PE, dated May 31st, 2024, and consisting of 18 sheets. G, signed and sealed copies of the traffic report entitled Traffic Impact Study for Proposed McDonald's Restaurant with Drive-Thru, prepared by Dynamic Traffic, Craig Perigoy, PE, and Connor Hughes, PE, dated May 28th, 2024. H, resolutions of approval related to the property. 4, the board considered the following submittals from its consultants. A, report of William Wyden, PE, of Anderson and Denzler Associates, board engineer, dated September 5, 2024. B, report of Elizabeth C. Lahaney, AICP, PP, of Phillips Price Greigel Lahaney Hughes, LLC, board planner, dated August 8, 2024. And C, reports of Harold K. Maltz, PE and PP, of Hamal Associates, Inc., traffic consultant, dated June 21 and October 18, 2024. And 5, the board carefully considered public comments as well as the following testimony at the public hearings. A, applicant produced Tiago Duarte, PE, of Dynamic Engineering, who testified as to his credentials and was accepted as an expert in the field of civil engineering. B, Mr. Duarte testified as to Exhibit A1, an aerial map that outlines the subject property. He testified as to the size and location of the property, which is 42,486 square feet, as well as the surrounding uses. The property is currently developed with a vacant Friendly's restaurant and multi-tenant commercial space. There are currently 2 full movement driveways on Speedwell and 1 full movement driveway on Dayton Road. He further testified that the application proposes to make the driveway on Dayton Road egress only. The application seeks to remove all site improvements and to construct a 3,036 square foot building for a McDonald's drive-through restaurant with associated parking and related improvements. C, he further testified that the new building will have a 52-foot front yard setback from the road, while the existing Friendly's building is 22.3 feet, a non-conforming condition. He testified as to Exhibit A2, a colorized site plan rendering with superimposed proposed landscaping. The requirement for setback of the building to the residential zone is 35 feet. The existing Friendly's is 34.5 feet, while the proposed McDonald's will be set back 96.7 feet from the residential line. Access to the property is proposed to be a single full movement driveway on Speedwell and an egress-only driveway on Dayton Road. The proposed exit onto Dayton will be shifted 13 feet from the adjacent residential property and 13 feet closer to Speedwell Avenue. D, he further testified that in response to comments from the board professionals, the access onto Dayton will be restricted to left turn out only towards Speedwell Avenue and away from the residential properties. The plans will be amended to include changing the angle of the driveway and using curbing to prevent right turns onto Dayton. He further testified that the application proposes 30 parking spaces with EV credits and with 2 EV credits for a total of 32 spaces, whereas 41 are required. There will be 39 seats inside the restaurant, and there are between 10 to 12 employees, depending on the time of the day. Depending on the number of seats, the Morris Plains Code would require 16 parking spaces, while based on the size of the building area, the Morris Plains Code requires 41 spaces. He testified that since COVID, approximately 2/3 of the traffic entering McDonald's uses the drive-through and do not dine in the restaurant. E, Mr. Duarte testified that the application does not propose a designated loading space because the deliveries only take about 30 to 45 minutes, are scheduled during off-peak hours, and are typically done twice per week. Off-peak hours mean between the morning and lunch rush and between the lunch and dinner rush. He further testified about site circulation, parking, and movement through the proposed drive-through lanes. In response to questions from the board, he testified as to where the delivery truck would typically park during the unloading process. He testified that the drive aisle is wide enough to accommodate the parked truck and the movement of traffic through the parking lot. F. Mr. Duarte testified as to Exhibit A3, a colorized version of sheet C18, vehicle circulation. He testified that the proposed circulation pattern and lack of a dedicated loading space is how typical McDonald's are designed, and he is not personally aware of cars being blocked by the truck during the unloading process at other locations. He further testified that McDonald's is seeking a waiver as it is proposing parking spaces 9 foot by 18 foot rather than the required 10 by 20. He testified that the parking is along the perimeter, allowing for an overhang so that 18 feet in length is sufficient. G. Mr. Duarte testified that they will install new LED fixtures. In response to comments from the board's professionals, the applicant will lower some light levels in the parking area. He testified as to the proposed landscaping on the perimeter of the subject property, and that the combination of the landscaping and proposed 8-foot-high vinyl fence would prevent car lights from shining onto neighboring residences. The Morris Plains Code limits the height of the fence to 6 feet, while the applicant seeks a variance to allow for 8 feet to prevent/lessen light impact on the neighboring residences. In response to questions from the board, the applicant consented to a condition that the site lighting would be on a timer to dim the lights during times when the restaurant is not open. He testified that the applicant will reduce impervious coverage by 2,533 square feet, improving and reducing peak runoff, and improvement to the existing stormwater conditions. The applicant will also use perforated pipe to further reduce stormwater runoff. H. He testified as to Exhibit A4, a colorized elevation of the proposed restaurant. The proposed siding is a fiber cement material. Mr. Duarte testified about the means by which the applicant would meet the required performance standards as to odors, which will be equivalent to or an improvement of the mechanism utilized in the Morris Plains Chick-fil-A and Chipotle. They will also meet all performance standards as to liquid and solid waste, noise, vibration, and glare, which is to be reviewed and approved by the board's professionals prior to and as a condition of obtaining a certificate of occupancy. I. He testified that the original plans proposed 5 building signs, but the applicant reduced it to 4. The code allows 1 sign per wall facing the public right-of-way, which the application as amended, proposes 2, requiring a variance. A variance for sign area is also required, where 32.8 square feet is proposed and 30.4 square feet is permitted. In response to questions from the board, the applicant amended the application to lower the wall sign count to 3, thereby removing the need for that variance. He further testified that there is an additional variance for the number of freestanding signs because the menu boards in the drive-through meet the definition of a freestanding sign. J. He further testified that the refuse area will have a brick veneer to match the building. The applicant consented to the condition that the gate to the refuse area would have a timed lock such that pickups could not take place overnight or before 7 a.m. The applicant agreed to provide granite block curbs and hairpin striping, thereby deleting the originally requested waivers for those issues. The applicant will also provide a site triangle easement, removing that requested waiver as well. The applicant consented to the condition that the deliveries will be during daylight hours and never overnight. Mr. Duarte further testified about compliance with the report of the board's engineer. The applicant had a pre-application meeting with the NJDOT and have incorporated the initial comments to widen the crosswalk from 6 feet wide to 10 feet wide. They have also incorporated the borough and NJDOT's request to install pedestrian actuated flashing overhead beacons with pedestrian crossing sign assemblies and to install, quote, do not block, close quote, striping on Speedwell Avenue, all of which must be approved by the NJDOT. He testified that the Speedwell Avenue access will require approval of a major access permit from the NJDOT. K, in response to questions from the board, by the board planner, the applicant agreed to revise the plans to incorporate an on-site crosswalk to channel foot traffic to the front door. The applicant will also obtain the review and approval of the board's planner on the final facade appearance and material. Applicant consented to add signs at the entrance to Dayton Road prohibiting right turns and to add the installation of bicycle racks. Mr. Duarte received questions from the public related to concerns about safety on and near Speedwell Avenue and Dayton Road. The hearing was continued to October 21st, 2024. L, Mr. Duarte was questioned by the public at the outset of the meeting on October 21st, 2024 about traffic, site layout, and safety, expected number of transactions and customers, and the use of Dayton Road by delivery trucks. M, Mr. Duarte testified about revisions that had been made to the plan since the previous meeting. He testified as to Exhibit A5, a colorized rendition of the site plan, which depicts the redesign of the Dayton Road driveway. He testified that changes were made to the angle at which cars approach and enter Dayton Road to deter any right-hand turns onto Dayton Road. The entrance point is also shifted further from the residential properties. The driveway width was reduced from 20 feet to 15 feet to further deter right-hand turns, and signage related to no right turn was also added. N, he testified that the driveway on Speedwell was shifted 3 feet to the north onto the subject property and also widened to improve maneuverability. He testified further about modifications to the landscaping plan, including the addition of a 3-foot-high berm along the rear of the property and additional plantings along Dayton Road to screen headlights. He testified about the bike parking and the inclusion of trash receptacles and revisions to the lighting. He agreed to comply with the comments and suggestions of the board's traffic engineer as to signage and striping. He further agreed that all site lighting, including menu boards, will be turned off except those that are needed at nighttime for safety and security. The applicant agreed that the hours of operation will be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Oh, Mr. Duarte testified as to Exhibit A6, a vehicle circulation exhibit, which demonstrates the ability of delivery trucks to enter the site from the northbound side of Speedwell Avenue. He further testified that the deliveries can be made from trucks that have side loading, which will allow for deliveries to go through the door at the rear of the store. Mr. Duarte was questioned by the public regarding revisions to the plans and site access and circulation. During colloquy of Mr. Duarte's testimony, a member of the public who lives on Dayton Road indicated she would not be in favor of deliveries in the early morning before the restaurant opened or at night after it closed. The hearing was continued to November 12th, 2024. P, Mr. Duarte was questioned by members of the public at the beginning of the November 12th, 2024 hearing. Q, the applicant presented testimony of Craig Paragoy, P.E., who testified as to his qualifications and was accepted as an expert in the field of traffic engineering. Mr. Paragoy testified as to the traffic report that he prepared dated May 8th, 2024 and revised September 13, 2024. The report looked at off-site traffic impacts and on-site circulation, parking, and the drive-through design. He testified that they took traffic counts on Speedwell Avenue at times determined to be the busiest on the roadway, as well as the times that the proposed restaurant will be at its busiest. He further testified about how and when the traffic counts were taken. The peak hours for traffic were determined to be 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and 4:45 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. on weekdays and 11 a.m. to noon on Saturdays. They also counted pedestrians crossing the crosswalk at Speedwell Avenue, which was 1 pedestrian in the morning, 8 in the evening, and 4 on Saturday. In addition to the traffic counts, the report utilizes a 2% growth rate utilized by the NJDOT to model future traffic. The report uses expected trip generation from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, published rates for fast food and drive-thrus. R, he testified about the peak hourly rates and the projected peak hourly rates based on ITE data. He further testified that both the ITE data and McDonald's project on a daily basis 710 trips in and out of the restaurant. He testified that utilizing the traffic counts and ITE analysis along with that recommended by the board's traffic engineer, it is projected that Speedwell driveway will operate at a level of service E or better, which is acceptable to the NJDOT, who has the ultimate control over the driveway. The data and analysis also indicated acceptable exit queuing. S. He further testified that they collected traffic data on September 12, 2024, on a day when school was in session, to undertake a gap study to determine the ability to access onto Speedwell Avenue. Based on published highway standards, there are sufficient gaps in traffic to accommodate 138 hourly exiting vehicles in morning peak hours, 104 in evening peak hours, and 113 in weekend peak hours. Further testified that based on projections of a high of 60 morning, 44 evening, and 74 Saturday exiting vehicles, there are sufficient gaps in traffic. Further testified that based on the relocation and widening of the Speedwell Avenue crosswalk and the installation of pedestrian actuated beacons and sign assemblies at the crosswalk and removing one of the driveways on Speedwell, there will not be any increased safety concerns for off-site traffic entering or exiting. T. He further testified regarding the adequacy of parking on site. He testified that Morris Plains requires the greater number of spaces based on the number of seats or based on the building size. Based on the number of seats, 16 spaces will be required, while based on the building size, 41 spaces will be required. Based on the ITE standards of parking spaces per seat, the average peak demand would be for 18 parking spaces. He testified that of the over 30 McDonald's that he has been involved in, the most cars he has ever seen parked in a lot was 30, and that was at a much larger restaurant with 97 seats, as opposed to 39 proposed at this location. Based on using ITE data and his experience with other sites, he testified that in his opinion, 30 parking spaces was more than enough parking to accommodate the proposed restaurant. U. He further testified about drive-through queuing. He testified that the drive-through system has a total capacity of 16 cars. Based on data from other New Jersey McDonald's, between 60 to 75% of their customers use the drive-through lanes. He undertook a queuing analysis using a presumption of 75% using the drive-through, which resulted in less than 1% chance of exceeding 8 spaces in the queue, and the probability of exceeding 12 spaces and backing onto Speedwell Avenue was 0.01%. He further testified that data from single-lane drive-throughs and double-lane drive-throughs support the analysis. Based on his review of the data and analysis, he provided his opinion that there was more than adequate queuing space on site to accommodate the restaurant and not back onto Speedwell Avenue. B. He testified as to Exhibit A7, which depicts the turning maneuver for cars pulling into the driveway. He testified as to Exhibit A8, which is a truck turning exhibit depicting the preferred location for the parked truck. The depicted space for parking and unloading of the truck is the standard layout used for McDonald's, which do not use or have a dedicated loading area. He further testified as to Exhibit A9, which depicts the ability of a vehicle to drive past the parked truck. W. Harold Maltz, the board traffic consultant, testified that he concurred with the trip generation calculations and that Mr. Paragoy had made changes that Mr. Maltz had recommended, and that he was satisfied with the calculations done by Mr. Paragoy. Mr. Maltz explained why he had requested the gap study and testified that he was satisfied with the results and that Mr. Paragoy had satisfactorily addressed the other comments in his report. Mr. Paragoy then responded to questions from the board and public. The hearing was continued to November 18th, 2024. At the November 18th, 2024 meeting, Mr. Paragoy continued to be questioned by members of the public regarding his traffic testimony. Why? The applicant presented Nicholas Graviano, PP, who was sworn in. The hearing was continued to December 9th, 2024. At the outset of the December 9th meeting, the applicant's attorney read a portion of a letter from Chris Shea, the Morris Plains Fire Marshal. In response to Mr. Shea's request, the applicant will amend their plans to show a fire lane in front of the building. AA. The applicant presented Nicholas Graviano, PP, who testified as to his credentials and was accepted as an expert in the field of planning. Mr. Graviano testified as to the existing conditions and proposed development, which is the subject of the application. He
provided testimony quoting the master plan re-examination report and the ordinance which permitted drive-throughs in the zone. He testified that the application meets all setback requirements. He testified about the modifications made to the initial plans to improve safety and circulation, including crosswalk improvements, the design of the driveway entering Dayton Road, landscaping, and the reduction of building-mounted signs. He provided his opinion that nothing in the application constitutes a substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance. BB. He testified as to the request for a variance for no loading space in section 13-5.7B1. He referenced the testimony that there will be only 2 deliveries per week and testimony that the loading, unloading, and unloading could be done safely without a loading space and that this is the standard design for McDonald's in Morris County. CC. He testified as to the request for a variance for the number of parking spaces in section 13-5.7A, Schedule E. He testified that the ordinance section has 2 standards, one based on the number of seats, which the applicant would complies with, and one for restaurant size for which a variance is required. He testified that the testimony established that 30 spaces would easily satisfy the ITE standards, and that 30 spaces was more than sufficient for the other 31 McDonald's in New Jersey which were referenced. In his opinion, the additional spaces would not be needed to satisfy the parking demand, and constructing the spaces would create additional detrimental impervious coverage. D. He testified as to the variance to allow an 8-foot fence, whereas 6 feet is the maximum height permitted in the zone. The higher fence creates more screening for the residential neighbors, and the benefit outweighs any detriment. He testified that as to the sign variance from section 13-5.8C and referenced Exhibit A10, a revised architectural elevation of the building depicting the building-mounted signs. He testified that the applicant was willing to work with the board's professionals as to the final facade design. On the front elevation, with a proposed McDonald's arches, a height variance is needed where 3.5 feet is proposed and 2 feet is permitted. On the south-facing facade, the applicant seeks a variance for proposed height and square footage of the Golden Arches signs. On the Dayton Avenue frontage, which has a McDonald's lettering sign, the applicant needs a variance for letter height. He further testified that the lettering height was selected to promote visibility and is similar in size to several banks on Speedwell Avenue. He further testified about the variance from section 13-5.8C1 for internal site lighting where internal lighting is not permitted. EE. He testified as to the variance for the number of freestanding signs caused by the menu boards. He testified this variance is mostly a technicality because the ordinance does not provide for menu boards. He testified that 1 freestanding sign is permitted and 5 are proposed. There is only 1 freestanding sign which meets the size limit on Speedwell. The other 4 signs and menu boards for the drive-thru. The mixed-use commercial overlay on Route 10 does provide for menu boards, and the proposed boards in the application would meet those requirements. The total square footage of the freestanding signs is 75.4 square feet, whereas a maximum of 20 square feet is permitted, requiring another variance. There is an additional variance for freestanding signs in the side yard, where they are only permitted in the side yard, necessitated because the menu boards are located in the side yard. Another variance for sign material is required where wood or wood-like material is required and aluminum is proposed. Finally, a variance for internally lit signs is requested whereas only indirect lighting is permitted. He further testified that the vast majority of commercial uses along Speedwell Avenue had no loading area. FF. He further testified as to the design waivers for parking stall size, 9 by 18, whereas 10 by 20 are required, and the screening to permit an 8-foot fence, whereas there is a maximum of 6 feet permitted. He testified that all the variances and waivers can be granted under the C2 criteria, in that the purpose of the municipal land use law would be advanced by deviation from the zoning requirements. He testified that the variance would advance purposes A, G, and I. G. He further testified that the benefits substantially outweigh any detriments. All of the variances do not create a substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, nor the public good, and there are solid reasons for granting all the requested variances. Mr. Graviano was questioned by the board professionals board members, and Heather Coomer, Esquire, on behalf of several borough residents, and finally by members of the public. Mr. Graviano testified that the applicant would amend the application to include gooseneck lighting and not internally lit signs to remove the need for variances for internally lit signs. H. Heather Coomer, Esquire, called Peter Steck, PP, who testified as to his credentials and was accepted as an expert in the field of planning. I. Mr. Steck testified about Exhibit 01. He testified as to the existing conditions of the subject property. Mr. Steck questioned whether the applicant had presented testimony as to the odor filtering system to be used and the noise from the speaker. He said that there is a house maybe 10 feet from where the delivery truck will park, and that clearly there is a noise issue. Mr. Steck provided his opinion that Section 13-5.7D creates the need for a variance for the parking in the front yard setback along Dayton Road. As to the possibility of headlights shining on residential properties, he testified he did not know the nature of the proposed 8-foot fencing. During cross-examination, Mr. Steck testified that he did not attend any of the prior meetings or review the transcripts of any of the prior meetings. He stated that prior to this evening, while I reviewed the application materials, I did not attend any of the hearings or listen to the prior testimony. He was asked, and of course, if you had reviewed the testimony, you might have had a different opinion in this case. He responded, I don't know. KK. At the December 16, 2024 hearing, Joseph Amoroso, PE, provided his credentials and was accepted as an expert in the field of traffic engineering. Mr. Amoroso testified that in his opinion, the traffic study was flawed because he believed there was flawed data collection. On cross-examination, Mr. Amoroso testified he had never prepared a traffic impact study for a drive-through restaurant and could not recall if he had ever critiqued a traffic study for a drive-through restaurant. LL. Tom Battagliese provided his credentials and was accepted as an expert in the field of environmental issues. He testified about issues related to environmental performance standards for noise, odors, and air pollution, and provided opinion that he believed the applicant had not demonstrated compliance with the performance standards. MM. The board finds that the valid concerns about the performance standards set forth in the Morris Plains Code will be addressed by requiring demonstration of compliance with all performance standards as a condition of approval, as is provided for in the code. NN. At the conclusion of Mr. Battaglise's testimony, a statement from Heather Coomer, Esquire, was read into the record, and testimony and comments were presented from members of the public, which included testimony about concerns regarding noise, pollution, traffic, and safety. At approximately 11 o'clock, the meeting was carried to December 18th, 2025. At the December 18th, 2024. At the December 18, 2024 hearing, testimony was received from members of the public related to concerns about noise, pollution, traffic, and safety. 6. With regard to the property and the development, the board finds the following. A. The property consists of 2 lots located in the B2 zone. B. The property consists of approximately 0.976 acres. C. The applicant proposes to demolish all existing structures and construct a 3,036 square foot McDonald's restaurant with 2-lane drive-through with 32 on-site parking spaces, landscaping, lighting, paving, and other related improvements. 7. With regard to the applicant's request for design waiver relief, the board finds the following. A. With respect to section 13-4.14C, 2.2 DI, parking stall size, the board finds that enforcement of the current regulations would be impracticable because the use of 10 by 20 foot parking stalls would further decrease the number of parking stalls and will exact undue hardship because of peculiar conditions pertaining to the land, namely the size of the property, which is being developed with a permitted use. B. Thus, the board thus finds that applicants' requested design waiver from sections 13-4.14C, 2.2 DI is reasonable and within the general intent of the regulation. C. With respect to section 13-4.1C, 2F, screening parking areas which faces residential uses with a fence no higher than 6 feet will be impracticable because an 8-foot high fence would more effectively screen the property and would exact an undue hardship because the alternative would be an unreasonable amount of landscaping. D. Thus, the board finds that the applicant's requested design waivers from section 13-4.1C2F is reasonable and within the general intent of the regulations. E. With respect to section 13-4.14C 2.1 and and 13-4.14B 3.6, which requires a rounded 25-foot radius at street intersections. The applicant's testimony and exhibits demonstrate the ability to safely maneuver into and from the property, period. F, thus, spell that. The board finds that applicant's requested design waiver from section 13-4.14C 2.1 and 13-4.14B 3.6 is reasonable and within the general intent of the regulations. 8, with regard to applicant's requested variance relief, the board makes the following findings and conclusions. A, because the property borders and abuts a residential use, the maximum height of a fence in the front yard is 4 feet and the side yard is 6 feet, while the application proposes a fence of 8 feet in height in order to effectively screen the residential home. A need was created for a variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C2 from the maximum fence height requirement. B, the board finds that such a variance would create a more desirable visual environment by effectively shielding the commercial use and parking lots from the adjoining residential uses. The board finds that the benefit of deviating from the requirement outweighs any detriment which might arise from the height requirement because it more effectively screens the residences with no detriment. C, Section 13-5.7A requires that a restaurant building of 3,036 square feet will require 41 parking spaces, while the applicant proposes a total of 32 spaces, 30 built and 2 space EV credit, which results in a need for a variance pursuant to 40:55D-70C2. D, the board finds that the parking variance would promote the public health, safety, and welfare by allowing the effective development of property on which there is currently a vacant restaurant, and will promote a desirable visual environment by allowing for the development of property on which there is a vacant building with a use permitted in the zone. The board finds that the testimony of the applicant's experts, which was reviewed and approved by the board's consultants, established that 30 parking spaces are sufficient for the proposed use due to the changing nature of fast food restaurants and will not have any detriment for that reason. The board gives less weight to the testimony of Peter Steck because of his failure to review the testimony of the applicant's engineer and his admission that his opinion might have been different if he had read the testimony. E, Section 13-5.7B1 requires that 1 loading space be provided, whereas the applicant seeks a variance for no loading spaces. F, the board finds that the variance for no loading space would promote the public health, safety, and welfare by allowing the effective development of property on which there is currently a vacant restaurant, and will promote a desirable visual environment by allowing for the development of the property on which there is a vacant building with a use permitted in the zone. The board finds that the testimony of the applicant's experts, which was reviewed and approved by the board's consultants, established that a dedicated loading space is not necessary due to the infrequent nature of deliveries and the ability to safely take deliveries without a loading space, and will not have any detriment for that reason. The board gives less weight to the testimony of Peter Steck, PP, for the reasons set forth above. The board acknowledges that there was testimony and concerns about the potential noise from delivery trucks. However, that same concern would arise whether the delivery trucks were located during deliveries and wherever they were located during deliveries, and therefore granting of the variance does not result in any greater noise issues than requiring deliveries in a dedicated loading space. G, the application seeks the following variances for signage. I, Section 13-5.8C1, 1.1G, to permit approximately 46.8 total square feet of wall signs on the south facade of the building, where the total area of wall signs on a single wall shall not exceed 1 square foot of sign area for each linear foot of store frontage, but not more than 40 square feet. 2, from Section 13-5.8C1, 1.1H, to permit 3.5-foot tall McDonald's logos, wall signs along Speedwell Avenue, the southern building facade, and the eastern building facade, where the height of a wall sign is limited to 2 feet. 3, from Section 13-5.8C1, 1.1A, to permit 1 facade sign on the rear of the building, eastern building facade, that is 14 square feet, where no signs are permitted on the rear of the building, which does not face on a street. 4, from Section 13-5.8C7, to permit 5 freestanding signs in the drive-through where 1 freestanding sign is permitted. 5, from section 13-5.8C, 7.2, to permit freestanding signs in the drive-through area where freestanding signs are only permitted in the front yard. 6, from section 13-5.8C, 7.3, to permit freestanding signs totaling approximately 75.4 square feet, where a maximum of 20 square feet is permitted. 7, section 13-5.8C, 7.7, to permit freestanding signs comprised of aluminum material and red or yellow in color, where freestanding signs are required to be constructed of painted wood, wood-like, or wood-appearing material, and shall be painted in dull or matte finished colors with contrasting colors for lettering and other message elements. H, the board finds that the variances set forth above related to signage would promote the public health, safety, and welfare by allowing the effective development of property on which there is currently a vacant restaurant, and will promote a desirable visual environment by allowing for the development of property on which there is a vacant building with a use permitted in the zone. They will also provide a sufficient visibility to passing motorists. The board notes the intensity of several of the signage variances was decreased by the applicant at the suggestion of the board and its professionals. The board finds that the testimony of the applicant's experts, which was reviewed and approved by the board's consultants, established that the proposed signage is necessary for the effective identification of the proposed restaurant and the effective movement of vehicles on site, and is similar to signage already existing in the vicinity of Speedwell Avenue, and will not have any detriment for that reason. The board gives less weight to the testimony of Peter Steck for the reasons set forth above. I, section 13-4.1C2F, to permit no or limited screening of off-street parking spaces along the front yard facing Dayton Road, where all off-street parking and loading areas are required to be screened by a fence, wall, or landscaping when facing premises situated in any residential zones. J, the board finds that the variance set forth above related to screening of off-site parking spaces will promote the public health, safety, and welfare by allowing the effective development of property on which there is currently a vacant restaurant, and will promote a desirable visual environment by allowing for the development of property on which there is a vacant building with the use permitted in the zone. The variance also promotes the safe circulation and access because it is required in part due to the realignment of the egress driveway onto Dayton Road to prevent right turns. Due to the extensive landscape along other portions of the property facing Dayton Road, the fencing, and the movement of the existing driveway exit point closer to Speedwell Avenue, the variance will not have any detrimental impact. A, as to all the requested variances, the board finds that the benefits of deviation would substantially outweigh any detriment. Variance relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and with no impairment to the board's zone plan and zoning ordinance. The board finds that the application as presented does not require a front yard setback for parking areas as set forth in section 13-5.7D1. That section prohibits parking areas in the front yard setback, quote, unless specifically permitted in the respective zone, close quote. Another section of the Morris Plain Code, section 13-4.14C, Schedule A, is entitled Minimum Distance in Feet for Location of Parking and Loading Areas, and for the B2 zone provides a distance from the street right-of-way and from the property lines, satisfying the exception of, quote, unless specifically permitted in the respective zones, close quote. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Borough of Morris Plains in the County of Morris in the State of New Jersey on the 20th day of January 2025 as follows. 1. Preliminary and final site plan approval, lot merger, variances, and waivers as set forth above are hereby granted as depicted on the aforesaid plans, as amended, subject to the conditions hereinafter set forth. 2. Compliance with all fire and police department comments and recommendations. 3. Applicant shall comply with and revise the plans to address A, the June 21st and October 18th, 2024 reports of the board traffic consultant. B, the August 8th, 2024 report of the board planner. C, the September 5, 2024 report of the board engineer. 4, applicant shall submit revisions to the facade and architectural plans to the board planner and board engineer for review and approval prior to signing of the final plans. 5, all deliveries shall be during daylight hours during non-peak times and shall not occur during overnight hours. 6, all site lighting shall be on a timer such that all lights, except for those necessary for safety and security, shall dim when the restaurant is not open. 7, The trash/refuse enclosure shall contain a time block that will be set to prevent any trash refuse pickup during overnight hours. 8, applicant shall amend the plans to provide for hairpin striping and the use of granite block curbs. 9, applicant to amend plans to include the provision of no loitering signs at locations to be approved by the board engineer. 10, applicant to comply with the recommendations of the board's traffic consultant regarding the use of bollards to deter right-hand turns onto Dayton Road. 11, applicant shall comply with all recommendations of the board traffic engineer as to signage and striping, including the outline of pavement markings. 12, hours of operation shall be limited to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. 13, applicant shall amend the plans to provide for fire lanes as recommended by the Borough Fire Marshal. 14, applicant to revise plans to provide that all signs shall be lit with gooseneck lighting and not internally lit. 15, applicant shall amend the plans to provide for greater landscaping in the northeastern corner of the property between the Dayton Road exit and the eastern property line to shield residences on Dayton Road from the headlight glare. 16, applicant shall amend the plans to provide signage indicating that employee parking shall be in spaces along the eastern property line and shall require any employees to park in the indicated spaces. 17, applicant shall execute a developer's agreement with the Borough of Morris Plains in a form satisfactory to the borough attorney prior to the execution of the site plan, which shall include but is not limited to A, a requirement that the applicant post all necessary performance guarantees, B, a requirement that the applicant post all necessary maintenance guarantees. 18, applicant shall be bound by and comply with all the representations made by applicant and the applicant's witnesses and professionals before the board at all public hearings, and the same are incorporated herein and are representations upon which this board has relied in granting the approval set forth herein, and shall be enforceable against the applicant and any developer of a particular section or parcel as if those representations were made conditions of this approval. 19, this approval is additionally expressly subject to the following conditions. No trash or recycling shall be scheduled for pickup prior to 7 a.m. or after 9 p.m. B, applicant shall perform noise testing to ensure compliance with all noise standards, 65 dBA for daytime, 50 dBA for nighttime, in accordance with Ordinance 4-2019, prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, in compliance with the performance standard under the supervision of the construction code official. In the event the applicant fails the said test, it shall install noise attenuation measures to bring the site into compliance. C, applicant shall provide no idling signs at a location to be reviewed and approved by the board engineer. D, prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, applicant shall demonstrate compliance with all performance standards to be reviewed and approved in writing by the board engineer and shall comply at all times with the Borough Performance Standards Ordinance. Similarly, at the time of application for certificate of occupancy, applicant shall demonstrate that the actual business to occupy the tenant space as finally constructed conforms to the Performance Standards Ordinance. Continued compliance with the Performance Standard Ordinance shall be a requirement of continued occupancy or operation of any process or equipment. E, all building facades shall be constructed in accordance with the architectural plans for the site to be reviewed and approved by the board planner. F, applicant to obtain all necessary state, county, and local approvals, including a major access permit from the NJDOT in conformance with the plans submitted and approved as part of this application. 20, prior to the execution of site plan, A, applicant shall obtain the written approval of all plans as finally revised from the fire department. B, applicant shall obtain approval of the Morris County Soil Conservation District. C, all plan revisions are as required elsewhere, and this approval shall be submitted to the board engineer, board planner, and the board traffic consultant. D, applicant shall submit to the board engineer and borough attorney for review and approval a deed of merger. 21, prior to obtaining a construction permit, the commencement of site construction, building permit, and/or land disturbance, the following conditions shall be satisfied. Applicant shall pay all engineering inspection fees. 2, schedule a pre-construction meeting with the borough engineer and fire subcode official. 3, submit a construction cost estimate to the borough engineer for determination of inspection fee amount and payment of inspection fee. 4, install an orange construction snow fence in order to protect trees and shrubs to be retained. 5, obtain a signed site plan. 22, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, following conditions shall be satisfied. Applicant shall, 1, obtain the fire department's written confirmation of installation of required fire safety improvements, site familiarization, and walkthrough. 2, obtain police department's written approval of traffic signs, markings, and site familiarization and walkthrough. 3, obtain the borough engineer's written certification of satisfactory completion of the site improvements. Non-safety items such as landscaping, trees, top course of pavement, etc. may be deferred due to seasonal weather conditions. 4, post a 2-year maintenance guarantee for shade trees and landscaping. 5, submit as-built plans showing building setbacks and utility lines and profiles and height of buildings. 6, obtain the board secretary's written certification that adequate funds are in the board escrow account to cover all past, present, and future charges up to and including the issuance of certificates of occupancy. 7, all deed of easement shall be recorded in the Morris County Clerk's office and copies of same provided to the board secretary. 23, if any of the individual findings, conclusions, or conditions as set forth in this resolution are subsequently declared invalid, then the remaining findings and conclusions shall be deemed sufficient to support the decision of the board in the remaining conditions. 24, the board secretary shall provide a copy of this resolution to the borough attorney and to the construction official within 20 days of the date hereof. 25, this resolution shall take effect as provided by law. One of the three we're moving. Yeah.
So can I have a motion to approve this resolution? Second? Second.
Okay.
Karen?
Was it Mrs. Stecker and then Mrs. McCluskey or the opposite?
Karen, roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Stecker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
And Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Make an announcement as to 1625. What do you call to that? What's up? You got it.
Good night, gentlemen. Okay. The last application on the agenda tonight is PE-3-24. 1625 Route 10 LLC, Block 171, Lot 45.02, and 225 Littleton Road LLC, Block 171, Lot 45.03. Sure.
I was contacted by the applicant's attorney who understood with the weather and the interest in other applications that they asked to be carried. So this the application PB 3-24 is technically started right now, but only for a millisecond to carry it to the next meeting of this board, which is scheduled for February 10th, 2025, correct?
Correct.
So there'll be no further notice on that application. I believe that is
Back in our normal spot, which is 531 Street Level. Yes. We are going to close this. Good? Okay. Committee reports, minor site.
Excuse me, I need a motion and a second for that, and we can do a voice vote, it's no problem, but to carry it.
All right, so can I get a motion to carry the Weichert to next month's meeting?
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Forkenflip?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Stecker?
Yes.
Mrs. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Bezold?
Abstain.
Okay. Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
And, Mr.
Yes.
Committee reports, minor and master plan, any updates there? I mean, from the- Okay.
Second. Second. Roll call.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Mrs. Sticker?
Yes.
McCluskey?
Yes.
Mayor Karr?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Bezold?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Next scheduled planning board meeting is February 10th, council chambers, 500 Speedwell Avenue. And we need a voice vote there. Good. Motion to adjourn.